Help my mom, they beat her. How a single dad. Navy SEAL mechanics saved the Millionaire CEO a parking garage. 3 armed men. A billionaire CEO bleeding on concrete. And the one man who could save her? The same mechanic she destroyed 2 years ago. This is the story of Sophia Grant and Ethan Ward, where betrayal, redemption, and love rose from the ashes of tragedy. Stay with me until the end, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. What? The first thing Sophia Grant noticed was the silence. It shouldn't have been silent. Not at 9:47 p.m. in downtown Seattle, not in the executive parking garage beneath Grant Tech Industries' gleaming 40-story headquarters. There should have been the hum of ventilation systems, the distant echo of footsteps, the ambient noise of a building that never truly slept. But as Sophia's Louboutin heels clicked against the polished concrete floor, moving toward her midnight blue Bentley Continental, all she heard was the hollow rhythm of her own footsteps and the rapid beating of her heart. Something was wrong. She'd built an empire on instinct. That same instinct now screamed at her to run. Sophia's fingers tightened around her phone, thumb hovering over the security speed dial. Her other hand clutched her leather briefcase. Inside, documents that could destroy careers, end partnerships, reshape her entire company. The emergency board meeting had lasted 6 brutal hours. Charles Reynolds, her trusted vice president of operations, had finally been exposed. The evidence was damning: forged safety reports, bribes to inspectors, a paper trail of corruption that stretched back 5 years. And at the center of it all, a name she'd tried to forget: Ethan Ward. The mechanic she'd fired, the man she'd ruined, the whistleblower she'd ignored. Sophia's heels echoed louder now, faster. 30 feet to her car. 25. Her keyless entry should have unlocked the doors automatically, but the Bentley remained dark, unresponsive. She pressed the button on her key fob. Nothing. Again. Nothing. That's when she heard it, the scrape of shoes on concrete coming from behind the concrete support pillar to her right. Mrs. Grant. The voice was smooth, professional, terrifyingly calm. We need to talk. Sophia spun around. 3 men emerged from the shadows, fanning out in a practiced formation that spoke of military training or worse. They wore dark suits, crisp white shirts, no ties. The one who'd spoken, tall, silver-haired, with a jaw like carved granite, smiled at her. It was the kind of smile that never reached the eyes. I don't know who you are, Sophia said, forcing steel into her voice. But this building has cameras on every level. Security will be here in 30 seconds. No, they won't. Silverhair stepped closer. Your head of security, Marcus Chen? He's taking a very lucrative early retirement as we speak. The cameras on this level have been experiencing technical difficulties for the last 15 minutes. And your phone, he nodded toward her hand. Well, signal jammers are remarkably effective in concrete structures. Sophia glanced at her phone screen. No signal, no Wi-Fi, no connection to the world that existed just 3 floors above her head. What do you want? She hated how her voice wavered on the last word. You have something that belongs to our employer. Documents, evidence, things that could prove inconvenient. Silverhair's smile widened. We're here to ensure those documents disappear, along with anyone who's seen them. The 2 other men moved closer, boxing her in. One was shorter, built like a bulldog, with scarred knuckles that suggested he enjoyed his work. The other was younger, nervous, his hand twitching toward something beneath his jacket. Sophia's mind raced. The documents were in her briefcase. Copies were in her home safe, digitally encrypted on her private server. Even if they took the physical evidence, even if they killed her, the truth would come out. Wouldn't it? Charles sent you, she said. It wasn't a question. Mr. Reynolds is a man who believes in tying up loose ends. You've become a very loose end, Mrs. Grant. Silverhair nodded to his companions. Gentlemen, make it quick, and make it look like a robbery gone wrong. They moved fast, but Sophia moved faster. 20 years of self-defense classes, private trainers, paranoia disguised as fitness routines. She swung her briefcase at the nearest man, the bulldog, connecting with his temple hard enough to stagger him. Then she ran. Not toward her car, That was a trap, a dead end. Instead, she sprinted toward the exit ramp, heels hammering concrete, lungs burning. Behind her, she heard cursing, footsteps giving chase. She'd made it maybe 40 feet when something slammed into her from behind. The nervous young one had tackled her, driving her to the ground with enough force to crack her phone screen and split her lip against the concrete. Pain exploded through her face, her ribs, her hands as she tried to break her fall. "Stupid bitch," the young one hissed in her ear, hauling her up by her hair. "You just made this harder on yourself." Sophia tasted blood. Through blurred vision, she saw Silverhair approaching, calmly, unhurried. He'd retrieved her briefcase. The bulldog had recovered, touching his temple where a trickle of blood ran down. "I was going to make it painless," Silverhair said, genuine regret in his tone. "But Marcus is right. You corporate types always have to fight back." That's when Sophia saw the knife. It was a simple thing, 4 inches of steel, the kind of weapon that left no evidence, no ballistics, no trace. Silverhair tested the edge with his thumb, nodded in satisfaction. "Hold her still, Marcus." The young one yanked her head back, exposing her throat. Sophia tried to scream, but his other hand clamped over her mouth. She could smell his cologne, sickeningly sweet. She could see her reflection in Silverhair's polished shoes as he approached. "This is how I die," she thought. "On the floor of my own parking garage, killed by men I've never met. All because I was too proud, too blind, too goddamn stubborn to listen when it mattered." Ethan Ward had tried to tell her, 2 years ago. He'd begged her to shut down Plant 7. He'd shown her the safety reports, the stress fractures in the support columns, the malfunctioning pressure valves. And she'd fired him, believed Charles's lies about a disgruntled employee trying to sabotage the company, watched security escort him from the building while he shouted warnings that she'd dismissed as hysteria. 63 days later, Plant 7 exploded. 14 workers died. 14 families destroyed. And Charles had made sure all the evidence pointed to Ethan. Faulty repairs, negligent maintenance, a paper trail that painted him as incompetent at best, criminally negligent at worst. Now, as Silverhair raised the knife, Sophia Grant finally understood the price of her blindness. The blade descended, and then the world exploded. Not literally, though it felt that way. One moment Silverhair was there, knife glinting under fluorescent lights. The next moment he was flying backward, slammed into a concrete pillar with enough force to crack ribs. The knife clattered away, spinning across the floor. Someone moved through the shadows. No, not someone. A shadow that moved like water, like violence given form. The bulldog spun toward the threat, reaching for his weapon. He never made it. A hand caught his wrist, twisted, and the snap of breaking bone echoed through the garage like a gunshot. The bulldog's scream was cut short by an elbow to his throat, followed by a knee that lifted him off his feet and dumped him unconscious on the ground. 3 seconds. 2 men down. The young one, Marcus, released Sophia and fumbled for the gun under his jacket. "Don't move! Don't fucking move or I'll—" The shadow stepped into the light. Sophia's breath caught. She knew this man, knew the way he moved, economical and precise, knew the set of his shoulders, the worn leather jacket over a grease-stained Henley shirt, the calloused hands that now hung loose and ready at his sides. Knew the face that hadn't changed much in 2 years, still sharp-featured, still too young for the gray threading through his dark hair, still carrying the weight of someone who'd seen too much and survived anyway. Ethan Ward. "Put the gun down," Ethan said quietly. His voice was the same, low, steady, the kind of calm that came from controlling fear rather than not feeling it. "You're in over your head, kid." "Fuck you!" Marcus's hand shook. The gun barrel wavered between Ethan and Sophia. "I said don't move." "You don't want to do this." Ethan took 1 step forward, just one. "Those men aren't paying you enough to die in a parking garage." "I'm not going to—" Shh! Ethan moved. Later, Sophia would try to explain what she saw, and she'd fail to find words. It was too fast, too fluid. One moment, Marcus held a gun. The next, Ethan had closed the distance, slapped the weapon aside, and delivered 3 strikes, throat, solar plexus, temple, that dropped Marcus like a puppet with cut strings. Silence returned to the parking garage. Ethan stood over the 3 unconscious men, breathing steady, unmarked by the violence he'd just dispensed. Then he turned to Sophia. Their eyes met for the first time in 2 years. "Are you hurt?" he asked. Sophia tried to speak. Couldn't. Tried again. My lip." "Let me see." Ethan approached slowly, hands visible, non-threatening. Up close, she could see he'd aged, not in years but in miles, the kind of wear that came from carrying too much weight for too long. There were new scars on his knuckles, new lines around his eyes. He knelt beside her, gentle fingers tilting her chin toward the light. "Superficial. Might need a butterfly bandage. Your ribs?" "I don't know. It hurts to breathe." "Probably bruised, not broken. Can you stand?" She tried. Her legs shook, but held. Ethan steadied her with one hand on her elbow, the touch professional, distant. When she was stable, he released her immediately and moved to check on the 3 attackers. "They'll live," he said, feeling for pulses. "The one with the broken wrist will need surgery. The other 2 will have concussions." He pulled out his phone, an old model, scratched and practical, and dialed. "This is Ethan Ward. I need police and ambulance at Grant Tech Industries, executive parking level. 3 men down, 1 female victim needing medical attention. Yes, I'll stay on the line." Sophia stared at him. The man saving her life. The man she'd destroyed. "Why?" she whispered. Ethan glanced at her, phone still pressed to his ear. "Why what?" "Why did you help me, after everything I did to you?" He was quiet for a long moment, listening to the dispatcher. Then, "You're welcome," he said simply, and returned to his call. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Sophia sank down against her Bentley, legs finally giving out, adrenaline crash hitting like a tidal wave. She was shaking, hands, shoulders, everything. Her split lip throbbed. Her ribs screamed, but all she could think about was the impossible coincidence of Ethan Ward appearing exactly when she needed him most. "How?" she managed. "How were you here?" Ethan finished his call and pocketed his phone. He didn't look at her when he answered. "I work security for the building now, night shift, parking levels and loading docks. I saw you coming down on the camera feeds, saw 3 men following, recognized the setup from the military, standard 3-man kill team configuration, called it in and came running." "You work here? In this building?" "Been here 6 months, different name on the employee roster. Marcus Chen, your head of security, he's former Special Forces, recognized me from my SEAL days, kept it quiet, gave me a chance." Ethan finally met her eyes. "He's a good man. If Reynolds' people got to him tonight, they must have offered him something big, or threatened something bigger." The police arrived first. 2 patrol cars, lights flashing, 4 officers with hands on weapons until they assessed the scene. Then the ambulance. Then more police. Then security from upstairs, including Marcus Chen himself, limping, face bruised, but alive. "They jumped me in the stairwell," Marcus explained to the officers, voice tight with pain. 3 different guys, said if I didn't walk away they'd kill my daughter, showed me a picture of her at school. He looked at Sophia, genuine remorse in his eyes. "I'm sorry, Ms. Grant. I tried to stall them, tried to give security time to respond, but..." "You did what any father would do," Sophia said quietly. "I understand." The paramedics wanted to take her to the hospital. She refused. Just bandaged her lip, checked her ribs, bruised, not broken, as Ethan had guessed, and cleared her for release. The police wanted statements. She gave one, clinical and precise, leaving out nothing. Ethan gave his, equally thorough, standing apart from her, separate. They didn't arrest the 3 attackers immediately, 2 unconscious. Instead, they cuffed them to gurneys and posted guards. Silverhair was identified as James Sullivan, former Force Recon Marine, current freelance security consultant, with a history of making problems disappear. The other 2 had similar backgrounds. The gun was unregistered, the knife was clean, professional, expensive, traceable back to Charles Reynolds, if the investigators were smart enough to follow the money. "Ms. Grant!" Detective Sarah Moreno approached, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s with tired eyes and a patient demeanor. "I know tonight was traumatic, but I need to ask, do you have any idea why these men targeted you?" Sophia glanced at Ethan. He stood 20 feet away, talking to another officer, deliberately not listening to her conversation. She made a decision. I have evidence, she said, of corporate corruption within my own company. Documents proving that my vice president, Charles Reynolds, has been falsifying safety reports, bribing inspectors, and covering up criminal negligence that resulted in deaths. Tonight was supposed to be the night I presented that evidence to the board. I believe Mr. Reynolds sent these men to stop me. Detective Moreno's expression sharpened. That's a serious accusation. I have proof. In my briefcase, the one they tried to take, and in encrypted files on my private server. I'll give you everything. But I want immunity for coming forward, and I want protection. If Reynolds is willing to kill me, he'll try again. I'll need to bring in the FBI. Corporate corruption resulting in deaths, that's federal jurisdiction. Do it. Tonight. Now. Sophia's hands had stopped shaking. Her voice was steady again, cold again. The adrenaline had burned away, leaving only the icy clarity she'd built her empire on. I want Charles Reynolds in handcuffs before sunrise. It took 3 hours. 3 hours of statements and photographs and evidence collection. 3 hours of FBI agents arriving, stern-faced and efficient, taking over the investigation from Seattle PD. 3 hours of Sophia sitting in her own conference room, still in her blood-stained blouse, split lip throbbing, walking federal investigators through 5 years of corruption. She showed them everything: forged inspection reports, bribes paid to city officials, internal memos where Charles had overruled safety concerns, and at the center of it all, Plant 7. Ethan Ward came to me 2 years ago, Sophia told Agent Victoria Chase, a no-nonsense woman with steel-gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. He was our lead safety mechanic. He'd found critical structural failures in our oldest manufacturing plant. He begged me to shut it down immediately, said it was a disaster waiting to happen. My vice president convinced me that Ward was exaggerating, trying to extort the company, angling for a promotion by manufacturing a crisis. And you believed him? Sophia met the agent's gaze. I believed what I wanted to believe. Charles Reynolds had been with me for 15 years. Ethan Ward was a mechanic I'd met twice. The decision should have been obvious. She paused. I made the wrong one. Agent Chase studied her. What happened next? I fired Ward. Had security escort him out. 63 days later, Plant 7 exploded during the night shift. 14 workers died. The official investigation blamed Ward, said the explosion was caused by faulty repairs he'd made weeks earlier, negligent maintenance, improper safety protocols. He lost his engineering license. No one in the industry would hire him. His wife? Sophia's voice caught. His wife died 3 months after the explosion. Cancer. Rapid onset. He had a daughter to raise alone. No job, no prospects. Drowning in medical debt. And you believed he was responsible. Charles showed me evidence. Maintenance logs with Ward's signature, reports documenting his errors, testimony from other workers saying Ward had been cutting corners, acting erratically. Sophia closed her eyes. I believed it because believing anything else meant accepting that I'd murdered 14 people. But now you know different. Now I know that every piece of evidence was forged. Every witness was coerced or paid off. Charles orchestrated the entire cover-up to protect himself because he was the one who'd overridden Ward's warnings, who'd kept the plant running to meet production quotas, who'd lined his pockets with the money we saved by ignoring safety regulations. She opened her eyes. And tonight, when I finally had proof, Charles tried to have me killed rather than face justice. Agent Chase made notes, expression unreadable. Where's Ethan Ward now? I don't know. After he gave his statement to the police, he left, said he had to get home to his daughter. We'll need to interview him. I know. Ms. Grant. Agent Chase set down her pen. You understand that you could face criminal charges as well? As CEO, you bear ultimate responsibility for your company's actions. 14 deaths, dozens more injured, families destroyed, negligent homicide at minimum, potentially more. I know. Sophia's voice didn't waver. I deserve whatever punishment I get. But Charles Reynolds orchestrated this. He's the one who needs to face justice first. Agent Chase studied her for another long moment. Then she nodded. All right. I'll recommend immunity in exchange for full cooperation. But Ms. Grant, if you're lying to us, if this is some kind of scheme to shift blame, I'm not lying. And I have a witness who can corroborate everything. Someone who tried to warn me 2 years ago and paid the price. Ethan Ward. Yes. Then we'll need to bring him in. Tonight. Before Reynolds realizes what's happening and runs. But Charles Reynolds didn't run. At 4:17 a.m., FBI agents arrested him in his suburban mansion, dragging him out in handcuffs and pajamas while his wife screamed about lawyers. They seized his computers, his files, his phones. In his home safe, they found $4.7 million in cash, multiple passports, and a handwritten ledger documenting every bribe, every payoff, every dirty deal he'd made over 15 years. They also found a contract, signed, dated, paid in full, for the assassination of Sophia Grant. By 6 o'clock a.m., it was over. Charles Reynolds was in federal custody. The FBI had frozen his accounts, seized his assets, and begun unraveling his network of corruption. Sophia sat in her office, watching the sunrise paint Seattle's skyline in shades of gold and rose, and felt nothing at all. Numb. Empty. She'd spent 2 years believing a lie. 2 years letting an innocent man suffer while she prospered. 2 years. Her office door opened. Ethan Ward stood in the doorway, still wearing his grease-stained jacket, still looking like he hadn't slept. Behind him, Agent Chase nodded permission and stepped back. "Mr. Ward," Sophia said quietly, "thank you for coming." Ethan didn't enter. He stood at the threshold, one hand on the doorframe, like he was ready to bolt at any moment. "Agent Chase said you wanted to see me." "I did. I do." Sophia stood, wincing as her bruised ribs protested. "I owe you, God! I owe you everything. An apology, an explanation, compensation for what I did to you." "Stop." Ethan's voice was flat. "I didn't come here for an apology." "Then why did you come?" "Because Agent Chase said you had evidence that could clear my name. She said you'd testify that Reynolds forged the reports, that I tried to warn you, that I wasn't responsible for Plant 7. He met her eyes. Was she telling the truth? Yes. Everything I told the FBI tonight, I'll say in court, under oath. Every media outlet in the country. I'll spend the rest of my life telling the truth if I have to. You tried to save those workers. I'm the one who failed them." Ethan was quiet for a long time. Then, 14 families lost people they loved because you wouldn't listen. My wife, Jenny, she developed stress-induced breast cancer from watching me destroyed, died without seeing my name cleared. My daughter Leah had to watch her father become the most hated man in Seattle. I lost my career, my savings, my reputation. His voice was still flat, emotionless, which somehow made it worse. "And you think an apology covers that?" "No." Sophia's throat tightened. "I don't think anything covers that, but I'm going to try anyway. Whatever you need, money, lawyers, a public statement, my company. I don't want your money." "Then what do you want?" Ethan finally stepped into the office. He moved to the window, looking out at the same sunrise Sophia had been watching. "I want those 14 families to know the truth. I want the workers who survived to know I didn't betray them. I want my daughter to grow up without people spitting when they hear our name." He turned to face her. "Can you give me that?" "Yes. I swear to God, yes." "Then we have nothing else to discuss." He headed for the door. "Wait." Sophia moved around her desk. "You saved my life tonight. Those men would have killed me if you hadn't intervened. You didn't have to do that. After everything I did to you, you could have walked away." Ethan paused at the door. "I was a Navy SEAL for 8 years. We had a saying, the only easy day was yesterday. It meant that every day you faced something harder than before. Every day you had a choice. Do the easy thing or the right thing." He glanced back at her. "Letting you die would have been easy, but my daughter doesn't need a father who chooses easy. She needs one who chooses right, even when it costs him everything." Then he was gone. Sophia stood alone in her office, watching the door swing shut, feeling the weight of those words settle into her bones. Ethan Ward had saved her life, saved her company, saved her from becoming a murderer's victim, and all because he'd chosen right when she'd chosen wrong. The shame was suffocating. Her assistant knocked tentatively. "Ms. Grant, the media is gathering downstairs. They're asking about last night, about the arrest, about—" She hesitated. "About Plant 7. What do you want me to tell them?" Sophia looked out at the city. Somewhere out there, Ethan Ward was going home to his daughter. Somewhere out there, 14 families were waking up to another day without their loved ones. Somewhere out there, the truth was waiting to destroy her. "Tell them," Sophia said quietly, "that I'll be making a statement at noon. Full disclosure. No lawyers, no spin, no corporate doublespeak. Just the truth. Ms. Grant, the board will never approve. I don't care what the board approves. Get me a podium, get me cameras, and get me every reporter in Seattle. By tonight, everyone will know exactly what kind of person I've been." She turned to her assistant. "And what kind of person I'm going to become." The next 6 hours passed in a blur of preparation. Sophia showered in her private executive bathroom, changed into a simple black suit. No jewelry, no makeup beyond the bare minimum, nothing to suggest she was trying to hide. She wrote her statement by hand, crossing out lines, starting over, forcing herself to confront every terrible decision she'd made. At 11:45, her communications director tried one last time to stop her. "Ms. Grant, please, let me draft something more measured. You're about to commit corporate suicide. The board will remove you. Shareholders will sue. The company could collapse. Then it collapses." Sophia's voice was ice. Better that than building an empire on bodies. At noon, she walked out to the podium they'd set up in Grant Tech's lobby. The crowd was enormous. Reporters, cameras, employees, protesters who'd been gathering outside since the arrests were announced. The room fell silent as she approached the microphone. Sophia Grant, billionaire CEO, looked out at them all and said, "My name is Sophia Grant, and 2 years ago I killed 14 people." The room erupted. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. She waited for the chaos to subside, then continued. "I didn't set the explosion. I didn't forge the safety reports. But I created the environment where corruption thrived and safety was ignored. When a brave man tried to warn me, I fired him. When evidence suggested I was wrong, I buried it. And when 14 workers died because of my decisions, I let an innocent man take the blame." She told them everything. Charles Reynolds' corruption, Ethan Ward's warnings, her own willful blindness, the attack in the parking garage, the FBI investigation, every shameful detail. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," she said. "I don't deserve it. I'm not asking for understanding. There is no understanding what I've done. I'm simply telling you the truth, because the man who saved my life last night taught me something. Choosing right is harder than choosing easy, but it's the only choice that matters." She read out the names of the 14 workers who'd died, spoke about their families, announced that she was liquidating her personal fortune, $800 million, to create a victims' compensation fund. Revealed that she'd instructed her lawyers to waive all corporate legal protections and accept full responsibility for the explosion. "If anyone deserves to go to prison," Sophia said, "it's me. Charles Reynolds orchestrated the cover-up, but I created the company where such corruption was possible. I will cooperate fully with every investigation. I will testify at every trial. And I will spend the rest of my life trying to make amends for the unforgivable." She stepped away from the podium and walked back through the lobby, ignoring the shouted questions, the accusations, the few people who actually applauded. In the elevator alone, she finally let herself shake. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "I watched your statement. It was a start." E.W. Ethan Ward. He'd been watching. He'd seen her confession, and he'd called it a start. Sophia closed her eyes and let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. A start. Not forgiveness, not absolution, just a start. She could work with that. The next 3 weeks were hell. The board demanded her resignation. She refused, then called a vote of no confidence against herself. Lost. Was removed as CEO but retained majority shareholder status. Used those shares to force the company to implement immediate safety reforms, third-party inspections, anonymous whistleblower hotlines, mandatory shutdown protocols for any facility showing structural stress. The FBI investigation expanded. They uncovered 37 additional deaths, accidents at Grant Tech facilities over 15 years, all covered up by Reynolds' network. Sophia testified for 6 days straight, answering every question, providing every document, accepting every accusation. The families of Plant 7's victims filed a class action lawsuit. Sophia's lawyers wanted to fight. She fired them and settled for every penny they asked, $450 million. It bankrupted 3 of her shell companies and cost her controlling interest in 2 subsidiaries. She signed the papers without reading them. The media was merciless. Cable news ran 24-hour coverage. Corporate queen to killer CEO. Billionaire's confession rocks tech world. Grants fall from grace. They showed split screens. Her mansion worth $40 million, photos of grieving widows. They interviewed former employees who called her a monster. They debated whether her confession was genuine or a calculated PR move. Through it all, Sophia said nothing. Did nothing. Just worked with investigators, signed settlement checks, and dismantled her own empire piece by piece. She didn't see Ethan Ward again, until the day she showed up at his apartment. It was a Tuesday evening, 3 weeks and 2 days after the parking garage. Sophia found his address through Marcus Chen, who'd been cleared of wrongdoing after FBI confirmed his daughter had been threatened. The apartment was in a rundown complex in South Seattle, the kind of place where paint peeled and stairs creaked and nobody made eye contact in the hallways. Sophia, still wearing her black suit, still trying to look like someone who deserved to breathe, knocked on Unit 3C. The door opened to reveal a little girl, maybe 9 years old, with dark hair and a ponytail and her father's gray eyes. "Hi," the girl said. "Are you selling something? Because Dad says we don't buy stuff from strangers." "Leah?" a voice called from inside. "Who is it?" "I don't know, some lady in a fancy suit." Ethan appeared behind his daughter, dish towel in hand, wearing jeans and a t-shirt with motor oil stains. When he saw Sophia, his expression went carefully neutral. "Ms. Grant," he said quietly, "this is unexpected. I'm sorry to show up unannounced. Sophia swallowed. "I needed to talk to you, in person." Leah looked between them, frowning. "Dad? Who is she?" "Someone from work, sweetheart. Go finish your homework." "But I want to know." "Homework, now." Leah rolled her eyes but obeyed, disappearing into the apartment with a dramatic sigh. Ethan stepped into the hallway, pulling the door mostly closed behind him. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "I know, but I've spent 3 weeks dismantling my company and my life, and I realized I never actually apologized. Not really. Not in person." Sophia forced herself to meet his eyes. "So I'm here to say I'm sorry. I'm sorry for not listening when you tried to save those workers. I'm sorry for firing you. I'm sorry for believing Charles's lies and destroying your reputation. I'm sorry for your wife's death, for your daughter's suffering, for every terrible thing that happened because I chose ego over conscience. And I'm sorry that no amount of apologies will ever make it right." Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Then, "You're right. It won't." "I know. So why are you here?" "Because..." Sophia's voice cracked. She steadied it. "Because I need you to know that I see it now. The cost of my choices, the people I destroyed, the man you were before I ruined you. And I need you to know that every day for the rest of my life, I'm going to work to earn back even a fraction of what I destroyed." You can't earn it back." Ethan's voice was still flat, emotionless. "Those people are still dead. My wife is still gone. My daughter still had to watch her father become a pariah." "Then what do I do?" Sophia whispered. "How do I live with this?" "You figure it out. Same way I did." Ethan reached for his door handle. "Good night, Ms. Grant." "Wait, please." Sophia pulled an envelope from her purse. "This is the settlement from the victim's lawsuit. $450 million. I want to create a foundation, safety training, workplace reforms, compensation for families affected by corporate negligence. But I can't run it. I'm toxic. No one will trust anything with my name attached." She held out the envelope. "You could run it. You know what needs to change. You lived the cost of ignoring safety. Those families would trust you." Ethan stared at the envelope like it was a live snake. "You want me to take your money?" "I want you to take $450 million and use it to prevent what happened to you from happening to anyone else. I'll sign over full control, legal, financial, operational. You'd never have to see me or speak to me again. Just, please, don't let those 14 deaths mean nothing. They already mean nothing. Throwing money at the problem doesn't bring them back. No, but it might save the next 14, and the 14 after that." Sophia's hand shook, still holding the envelope. "You saved my life." Let me save someone else's, even if it's through you." Ethan looked at her for a long time. She could see the war in his eyes. Anger versus pragmatism, hatred versus hope. Finally, slowly, he took the envelope. "I'll think about it," he said. "That's all I ask." He turned to go back inside. Stopped. Didn't look back when he said, "That statement you gave, the confession, it was brave. It was the bare minimum. Maybe, but it was still brave." Then he was gone, door closing softly behind him. Sophia stood in the hallway, tears finally coming, and let herself cry for the first time since the parking garage. Ethan Ward thought about it for 3 days. 3 days of reading Sophia Grant's proposal. 3 days of researching workplace safety regulations and corporate reform laws. 3 days of arguing with himself about whether accepting her money made him complicit in her crimes or gave him the power to prevent future ones. On the 4th day, he called her. "I have conditions," he said. "Name them." "First, I run everything. You have zero input. You don't attend meetings. You don't appear in photos. You don't get to feel good about yourself by watching me do this work." "Agreed." "Second, the foundation is named after the victims, not you. Every dollar spent comes with an explanation of why it's needed, because Grant Tech prioritized profits over people and 14 workers paid with their lives." "Agreed." "Third, I want full access to all Grant Tech safety records. Every facility, every inspection, every report. If there are more cover-ups, more dangers, I'm going to expose them, even if it destroys what's left of your company." Sophia was quiet for a moment, then, "Agreed. I'll have my lawyers draw up the paperwork. You'll have complete autonomy, complete transparency, and complete protection from any liability or blowback." "When can we start?" "Tomorrow. I've already secured a building, a warehouse space in Georgetown, near the old plant. It needs work, but it's yours. No strings attached." Ethan closed his eyes. The old plant, where 14 people had died because she wouldn't listen. Now she was giving him a building half a mile away to make sure it never happened again. The irony was suffocating. "Tomorrow," he said. "And Ms. Grant? This doesn't mean we're even. This doesn't mean I forgive you. This just means I'm choosing to do something useful with your guilt." "I understand." Her voice was soft. "Thank you, Ethan, for giving me a chance to do something right." He hung up without responding. That night, Leah asked him, "Dad, why was that lady crying in the hallway last week?" Ethan looked up from his laptop, where he'd been drafting organizational plans for a foundation he'd never expected to run. "What makes you think she was crying?" "I heard her after you came back inside. She was crying really hard." Leah frowned. "Is she the lady from your old job? The one who fired you?" "Yes." "Then why are you helping her?" Ethan set down his laptop and pulled his daughter into his lap. She was getting too big for this, almost 10 now, but she still let him hold her when the questions got hard. "Because sometimes," he said carefully, "people make terrible mistakes. And sometimes they spend the rest of their lives trying to fix those mistakes. And sometimes, if we're lucky, we get to choose whether to help them fix things or watch them fail. But she hurt you. She hurt our family." "She did. And I'll never forget that. But if I can use her mistakes to help other families, to make sure no other little girl loses her dad in an accident that could have been prevented, then maybe something good can come from something awful." Leah thought about this. "Is that what Mom would want you to do?" The question hit like a punch. Ethan closed his eyes, seeing Jenny's face, thin from chemo, brave until the end, holding his hand in the hospital and whispering, "Don't let this make you bitter. Promise me. Don't let them take your good heart." "Yeah," he whispered. "I think it is." Leah hugged him tight. "Okay. Then I think you should do it." The next morning, Ethan Ward and Sophia Grant met at the warehouse. She showed him the space, 5,000 square feet of concrete floors and metal rafters, dusty and empty, but full of potential. Showed him the bank account she'd set up, the lawyers she'd hired to handle incorporation, the grant writers and safety engineers she'd already recruited to help. "They all know the truth," she said. "They know what I did, why I'm doing this, and that you're in charge. Most of them are former Grant Tech employees, people who quit after Plant 7, who tried to speak up and were silenced. They want to be part of something better. Ethan walked through the warehouse, footsteps echoing, imagining what it could become: training center, advocacy organization, safety auditing firm, all the things that could have saved those 14 lives if someone had cared enough to make them exist. One more condition, he said. Sophia tensed. What? You have to be here. Opening day. You have to face the families we're trying to help and explain why this place exists. No hiding behind press releases or corporate spokespeople. You owe them that. She went pale. Ethan, if I show up, they'll be angry, furious. You might get spit on or cursed at or worse. But if you're serious about making amends, you have to face the people you hurt. Not me, not investigators, them. Sophia looked around the empty warehouse, the place that would become her penance or her redemption, depending on whether Ethan let her participate in building it. All right, she whispered. Opening day. I'll be here. Ethan nodded once. Then he pulled out a marker and walked to the wall. In broad strokes, he wrote, "The Phoenix Response Center." In memory of, followed by 14 names. Phoenix, Sophia said quietly, rising from the ashes. Something like that. Ethan capped the marker. Let's get to work. And they did. The Phoenix Response Center took shape slowly, like a bone healing after a bad break. Painful, imperfect, but growing stronger each day. Ethan worked 16-hour shifts, transforming the empty warehouse into something that mattered. He installed classroom partitions, built training stations, created a wall of memory where photographs of the 14 victims watched over everything they did. Sophia stayed away, true to her word, but her money flowed freely: equipment, salaries, insurance, permits. Whatever Ethan needed, she provided without question. 3 months after that conversation in the warehouse, they held their first training session. 12 workers from various Seattle construction sites, sent by unions who'd heard whispers of what Ethan was building. He taught them to recognize structural stress, to document safety violations, to speak up without fear of retaliation. At the end of the day, a 50-year-old electrician named Marcus, not Marcus Chen, different Marcus, approached him with tears in his eyes. "My brother died at Plant 7, Marcus said. Tommy Reeves. He was 42, 3 kids. Everyone said it was that mechanic's fault, that Ward guy who didn't do his job." He paused. "I didn't know that was you. I didn't know you tried to save them." Ethan's throat tightened. "I'm sorry I couldn't." "But you're trying now. That's more than anyone else did." Marcus extended his hand. "Thank you. Tommy would have wanted this place to exist." They shook hands, and Ethan felt something shift inside him. Not forgiveness, not healing, but purpose. The kind of purpose he hadn't felt since Jenny died, since his world had collapsed into lawsuits and grief and raising Leah alone in a city that hated him. That night he called Sophia. First time he'd initiated contact since opening day. "We need to talk," he said. "In person." She arrived at the warehouse within an hour, still dressed in the simple clothes she'd adopted post-scandal: jeans, plain sweater, no jewelry. She looked smaller somehow, like the weight of her guilt had physically compressed her. "What's wrong?" she asked immediately. "Did something happen? Do you need more funding?" "No, I need you to keep your promise. We're having our grand opening in 2 weeks. City officials, media, families of workplace accident victims. You said you'd be here. You said you'd face them." Sophia went pale. "Ethan, if I show up, it'll overshadow everything. The story will become about me instead of about the center. The story is already about you, about what happens when CEOs ignore safety warnings. These families need to see that you're not hiding, that you're genuinely trying to make amends." He crossed his arms. "Unless that confession was just PR." "You know it wasn't." "Then prove it." She was quiet for a long moment, staring at the memorial wall with its 14 photographs. "Will you be there? When they tear into me?" "I'll be there. But I won't protect you. You face this alone." "I understand." She took a shaky breath. 2 weeks. I'll be ready." But neither of them was ready for what happened next. 6 days before the grand opening, Ethan was closing up the center around midnight, late as usual, perfecting last-minute details, when his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. Then instinct kicked in, the old SEAL training that screamed threats don't announce themselves. "Hello?" heavy breathing. Then a girl's voice, young and terrified. "Dad?" His blood turned to ice. "Leah? Baby, where are you? Why aren't you at home?" "I don't know where I am. They took me from the apartment. There were 3 men and they—" Her voice broke into sobs. "Dad, I'm scared. There's another girl here too. She's crying. They said they'll hurt us if you don't—" The phone was yanked away. A man's voice, smooth and cold. "Mr. Ward, you've been very busy rebuilding your reputation. Impressive work. Unfortunately, your little safety crusade is causing problems for some very powerful people." Ethan's hand tightened on the phone. Every muscle in his body coiled for violence. "If you hurt my daughter, then you'll what? Hunt us down? Kill us? We both know you're not that person anymore." The voice chuckled. "But let's not get dramatic. This is simple business. You have evidence, documents, testimonies, recordings, proving that Grant Tech's corruption went beyond Charles Reynolds. Evidence that would implicate city officials, union bosses, construction firms. We want that evidence destroyed." "I don't have anything like that." "Don't lie. We know Sophia Grant gave you access to everything. We know you've been digging through 15 years of safety violations. We know you found the names." A pause. "Destroy the evidence. Shut down the center. Disappear. Do that and your daughter comes home safe. Let me talk to her again. You have 48 hours. We'll send instructions." The line went dead. Ethan stood frozen, phone still pressed to his ear, mind racing through 100 scenarios, all of them ending with Leah hurt or dead if he made the wrong move. He'd survived 8 years as a Navy SEAL, countless missions where one mistake meant death. But this was different. This was his daughter. This was the only good thing left in his shattered world. He called Sophia. She answered on the first ring, voice thick with sleep. "Ethan, what's wrong?" "They took Leah." His voice was steady despite the panic screaming in his skull. "Kidnapped her from my apartment. They're demanding I destroy all the evidence we've collected and shut down the center." He heard her sharp intake of breath. "Oh God. Ethan, I'm so sorry. This is my fault. If I hadn't dragged you into this—" "No time for that. Do you have a daughter?" "What?" "Yes. Emma. She's 12, lives with her father, my ex-husband." "Why?" "Call him. Now. Make sure she's safe." "Ethan, what are you— Just do it." The edge in his voice cut through her confusion. He heard rustling, frantic dialing, then Sophia's voice rising in panic. "David? David, is Emma there? Check her room, right now. I don't care if she's sleeping. Check her—" A pause. Then a sound that made Ethan's heart sink, a broken animal sound of pure terror. "She's gone. Oh God, she's gone. Her window's open and there's blood on the sill and—" "Sophia, listen to me. Breathe." Ethan forced his own panic down, locked it away where it couldn't help. "Are you at home?" "Yes." "Stay there. Lock your doors. I'm coming to you." "But Leah, they took both girls. This isn't just about me anymore. They're using our daughters as leverage against both of us." He was already moving, grabbing his keys, his old service weapon from the lockbox he'd sworn he'd never open again. "We're going to get them back. I promise you. But I need you to stay calm and stay safe until I get there." 20 minutes later, Ethan pulled up to Sophia's mansion. Not the $40 million estate she'd sold, but a smaller home in a gated community, the kind of place she'd downsized to after liquidating her fortune. He found her in the driveway, still in pajamas, talking to police officers who looked skeptical. "Ma'am, your ex-husband says there's been ongoing custody disputes. Are you sure this isn't just your daughter staying at a friend's house without permission?" "There was blood on her windowsill," Sophia's voice cracked. "Please, you have to believe me. Someone took my daughter." The officer exchanged glances with his partner. "We'll file a report, but without evidence of forced entry or a ransom demand." "I have evidence." Ethan stepped forward, showing his phone. "They called me. Threatened my daughter. It's the same people." The officers looked him up and down. Grease-stained jacket, hard eyes, the bearing of someone who'd done violence and would do it again. "And you are?" "Ethan Ward, former Navy SEAL. I work with Ms. Grant on workplace safety reform." He met their skeptical gazes. "Look, I know how this sounds, but 2 girls are missing, both daughters of people investigating corporate corruption. This isn't a custody dispute. This is a kidnapping. Sir, we need to follow procedure. Procedure won't save them. Sophia's composure shattered. Please. My daughter is 12 years old. She's terrified. She looked at Ethan, desperate. Tell them. Tell them about Plant 7, about Charles Reynolds, about all of it. So Ethan did. Told them about the explosion, the cover-up, the parking garage attack, the evidence they'd collected implicating dozens of powerful people. The officers' skepticism slowly transformed into concern. They called their supervisor. The supervisor called the FBI. By 3 a.m., Agent Victoria Chase was in Sophia's living room, looking exactly as tired as everyone else felt. Mr. Ward, Miss Grant, tell me everything. They did. Every detail, every threat, every piece of evidence they'd collected over 3 months. Agent Chase took notes, asked pointed questions, and finally leaned back with a grim expression. You've stumbled onto something bigger than you realize. Charles Reynolds wasn't the top of the food chain. He was middle management. The corruption at Grant Tech was part of a network that includes city officials, safety inspectors, construction unions, even some law enforcement. She paused. You were never supposed to dig this deep. Taking your daughters is a message. Back off, or everyone you love dies. Then we back off, Sophia said immediately. I don't care about the evidence. I don't care about justice. I just want Emma back. And give these people exactly what they want? Agent Chase shook her head. Ms. Grant, if you destroy that evidence, they'll kill your daughters anyway. Dead girls don't testify. Ethan's jaw clenched. Then what do we do? You let us handle this. FBI has resources. 48 hours. Ethan's voice was flat. They gave me 48 hours before they start hurting the girls. How long does the FBI need to build a case, get warrants, locate the kidnappers? Days? Weeks? Agent Chase was quiet. That's what I thought. Ethan stood. I'm not waiting for procedure while my daughter's in danger. I'm going to find her. Mr. Ward, if you interfere with an investigation, then arrest me after I get Leah back. He looked at Sophia. Are you with me? She stood without hesitation. Yes. Agent Chase studied them both. Then very quietly she said, I can't officially support vigilante action, but if I were you, I'd start by tracking down whoever's been trying to discredit your center. Someone's been spreading rumors, bribing inspectors to find violations, threatening your donors. Find that person, you find your kidnappers. She slid a business card across the table. This is my personal cell. If you find anything at all, you call me immediately. Understand? Ethan pocketed the card. Understood. They left Sophia's house as false dawn painted the sky gray. In the car, Sophia finally broke the silence. I don't understand. Why take Emma? She has nothing to do with the center. She doesn't even live with me. Because they wanted leverage on both of us. Ethan's hands were white-knuckled on the steering wheel. Taking just Leah puts pressure on me. Taking both girls forces us to work together, or turn on each other. I would never. They don't know that. They're counting on us being strangers, enemies even, too busy blaming each other to fight back. Then he glanced at her. But they made a mistake. What mistake? They think I'm just a mechanic, a washed-up SEAL who lost his edge. His voice went cold, deadly. They're about to learn different. They went to the center first. Ethan needed equipment, laptop, files, the security footage from the past month showing everyone who'd entered the building. While he worked, Sophia paced, phone pressed to her ear, calling in every favor she had left. David, it's me again. I need you to check Emma's computer, her phone records, her social media. See if anyone new contacted her recently. I don't care if it feels invasive. Our daughter's been kidnapped. Yes, I'm sure. The FBI is involved. Just do it. She hung up, looked at Ethan. Her father thinks I'm crazy. He thinks this is some elaborate scheme to get custody. Let him think whatever he wants. Did he check her devices? He's doing it now. Ethan's laptop beeped. Got something. 3 days ago, someone hacked our security system, disabled the cameras for exactly 90 seconds, just long enough to plant a listening device in my office. He pulled up the footage, enhanced the image. See that? White van, no plates, pulls up during the blind spot. Can you trace it? Van's a rental, paid in cash, but he zoomed in on the driver's reflection in a window. That's Dennis Crawford. Used to be a safety inspector for the city. I found his name in the files. He took bribes from Grant Tech for years, signed off on faulty inspections. If he planted the bug, he heard everything we've been planning for the opening and knew exactly how to hurt us. Ethan stood. We need to find Crawford, now. Sophia's phone rang. Her ex-husband. David? Did you? She listened, face going pale. Send me the screenshot, right now. She looked at Ethan. Emma was contacted through Instagram 3 weeks ago. Someone claiming to be a talent scout for a modeling agency. They arranged a meeting. Let me guess. The meeting was supposed to be today. Tomorrow. But the account's deleted now. David's trying to recover the messages. Ethan's mind raced. They've been planning this for weeks. Researching our families, finding vulnerabilities, setting traps. This isn't some panicked response to the center. It's a coordinated operation. Then how do we fight it? Same way I fought in the SEALs. We adapt, we improvise, we hit back twice as hard as they hit us. He grabbed his jacket. Dennis Crawford lives in Ballard. We start there. They drove north through morning traffic, Sophia silent and terrified beside him. Ethan kept his eyes on the road, but his mind was in that apartment, seeing Leah's room, the window that must have been pried open, his daughter dragged into the darkness while he worked late at the center. It's not your fault, Sophia said quietly, reading his thoughts. You couldn't have known. I should have. I was a SEAL. I was trained to spot threats, to protect people. But I got so focused on the center, on building something good, that I forgot the most important thing I had to protect. You were trying to save other people's children. That's not a failure. It is if I lose my own daughter in the process. His voice cracked. She's all I have left, Sophia. After Jenny died, after everything fell apart, Leah was the only reason I kept breathing. If they hurt her, they won't. We won't let them. He looked at her, this woman who'd destroyed his life and was now risking her own daughter to help him save his. The complexity was suffocating. Why? He asked. Why are you helping me? You could call the FBI, let them handle it, keep yourself safe. Because this is my fault. All of it. If I hadn't been so blind, so arrogant, none of this would have happened. Those 14 workers would be alive. Reynolds would never have built his empire of corruption. Our daughters would be safe in their beds. She met his eyes. I can't undo the past, but I can fight like hell to protect the future. They found Dennis Crawford's house at 7:15 a.m. Small bungalow, unkempt yard, a pickup truck in the driveway that had seen better decades. Ethan parked down the street, watching. What's the plan? Sophia whispered. I'm going to knock on his door and ask politely where my daughter is. And if he doesn't tell you? Ethan's expression went cold. Then I'll ask him politely. He approached the house alone, leaving Sophia in the car with instructions to call 911 if things went sideways. Knocked on the door. Waited. Knocked again, harder. The door opened to reveal a man in his 60s, unshaven, wearing a bathrobe that had seen better days. Dennis Crawford squinted at him. Yeah? What do you want? Information. Ethan's voice was calm. About a kidnapping. Crawford's expression flickered. Surprise, then fear, then false confusion. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. 3 days ago, you planted a listening device in the Phoenix Response Center. You've been feeding information to people who want that center shut down. And last night, those same people kidnapped 2 girls. Ethan stepped closer. I'm going to ask you once nicely. Where are they? I don't know anything about a kidnapping. You're crazy. Crawford tried to close the door. Ethan's hand shot out, catching it. I was a Navy SEAL for 8 years. I've interrogated enemy combatants in 7 countries. I know how to tell when someone's lying. He pushed the door open, forcing Crawford back. Where are they? Get out of my house or I'm calling the cops. Please do. I'd love to explain to the police why you planted surveillance equipment in my office. Ethan closed the door behind him, trapping Crawford in his own living room. But that would take time. Time my daughter doesn't have. So we're going to skip the games and get to the truth. Crawford stumbled backward, tripped over a coffee table, landed hard on his couch. Okay, Jesus, I did plant the bug. But I don't know about any kidnapping, I swear. They just paid me to listen in on your meetings, report back what you were planning. Who's they? I don't know names, just a phone number. They'd call, tell me what to do, wire money to an offshore account. Crawford was sweating now, terrified. I'm just a middleman, man. I don't know anything about the big picture. Ethan pulled out his phone, showed Crawford a picture of Leah. This is my daughter. She's 9 years old. Last night someone broke into my apartment and took her. If you help them, even indirectly, you're an accessory to kidnapping. That's 25 years minimum. Crawford stared at the photo, something shifting in his expression. Jesus. They took a kid? 2 kids. The other one's 12. Ethan's voice was deadly quiet. So I'm going to ask you again. Who hired you? I told you, I don't know. They're ghosts, man. No names, no faces, just money and orders. Crawford ran shaking hands through his hair. But there was something. Last time they called, I heard a voice in the background, someone arguing. They said something about the waterfront property and keeping them at the old site. What old site? I don't know. That's all I heard before they hung up. Crawford looked genuinely afraid now. Look, I know I'm a piece of shit. I took bribes. I falsified inspections. I helped cover up safety violations, but I never signed up for hurting kids. If I knew anything that could help you find them, I'd tell you. Ethan studied him for a long moment, reading body language, micro-expressions, all the tells he'd learned to recognize during interrogations. Crawford was scared, guilty, but telling the truth. The waterfront property, Ethan repeated. Grant Tech owned several waterfront locations. Which one? I don't know, man. That's all I heard. Ethan turned and walked out, leaving Crawford shaking on his couch. Back in the car, Sophia looked at him expectantly. Waterfront property, he said. Old site. Mean anything to you? Her face went pale. Oh God, Plant 7. I thought Plant 7 was demolished. It was, but we still own the land, 20 acres on the industrial waterfront. It's been empty for 2 years, waiting for environmental cleanup. She grabbed his arm. That's it. That's where they're holding them. Ethan was already driving, tires squealing as he spun the car around. Call Agent Chase. Tell her where we're going. Shouldn't we wait for backup? No time. If they realize Crawford talked, they'll move the girls or worse. His jaw was set. We're going in now. The drive to Plant 7 took 30 minutes through morning traffic. 30 minutes of silence and dread and Sophia's whispered prayers. When they finally pulled up to the chain-link fence surrounding the abandoned property, Ethan killed the engine and surveyed the scene. The plant itself was gone, demolished after the explosion, leaving only a concrete foundation and rusted equipment scattered across the grounds. But at the far end of the property stood a warehouse, small and unmarked, with a black SUV parked outside. That's them, Ethan said quietly. Stay here. Call Chase. If I'm not back in 15 minutes, I'm coming with you. Sophia, no. These are professionals. If they see you, those are our daughters in there. I'm not waiting in the car while you play hero. Her voice was steel. We do this together or not at all. Ethan wanted to argue, wanted to lock her in the car and go in alone, but he saw the determination in her eyes, the same determination that had built an empire, that had stood before cameras and confessed her sins, that had refused to hide when the world hated her. Stay behind me. Do exactly what I say. If shooting starts, you run. Understood? Understood. They approached the warehouse on foot using rusted equipment as cover. Ethan moved like a ghost, silent, efficient, reading the environment for threats. 2 guards outside the door, armed with pistols, looking bored. No other visible security. Either they were overconfident or this was a trap. We need a distraction, Ethan whispered. Sophia pulled out her phone. I'll call them. Pretend I'm willing to negotiate. That should draw them inside, away from the girls. They'll never believe, but she was already dialing. The phone she'd gotten from Crawford's surveillance equipment, the number they used to contact him. It rang twice before someone answered. Miss Grant. The voice was smooth, familiar, the same one that had called Ethan. I was wondering when you'd figure it out. I want to talk, Sophia said, voice steady despite her shaking hands. Face to face. I'll destroy the evidence, shut down the center, disappear. Whatever you want. Just let our daughters go. And I should trust you because I'm at the plant right now, alone, unarmed. You can verify. She glanced at Ethan. I'm done fighting. You win. Just please, don't hurt Emma. A pause, then, come to the main door, slowly, hands where we can see them. She hung up. Ethan grabbed her arm. What the hell are you doing? That's suicide. It's a distraction. When I walk up, they'll be focused on me. That's when you move. She pulled free. You're the SEAL. I'm trusting you to get our girls out. Sophia. But she was already walking, hands raised, moving toward the warehouse. The guards spotted her immediately, weapons drawn, shouting. Ethan watched her approach the door, watched it open, watched her disappear inside. Then he moved. Around the back of the warehouse, finding a window covered in grime, he wiped enough to see inside, and his heart stopped. There, in the corner, tied to chairs, blindfolded and terrified, were Leah and Emma. Two guards stood near them, focused on whatever was happening at the front entrance. Sophia's distraction was working. Ethan tried the window, locked. He looked around, found a piece of rebar, used it to quietly pry the frame. The old metal gave with barely a sound. He slipped inside, dropping into a crouch behind a stack of crates. Voices echoed from the front of the warehouse. Sophia's voice, strong and defiant. I did what you asked. I came alone. Now let them go. A man's laugh. You think this is a negotiation? You're here because we allow it. Your daughters are alive because we permit it. And you'll do exactly what we say, or what? Sophia's voice rose. Or you'll kill us all. Then who destroys the evidence? Who shuts down the center? You need me alive, you son of a bitch, so stop pretending you have all the power. The slap echoed through the warehouse. Emma screamed through her gag. Leah sobbed. Ethan saw red. He moved fast, closing the distance to the two guards near the girls in seconds. The first one never saw him coming. A chokehold from behind, quiet and efficient, lowering him unconscious to the floor. The second guard turned just in time to catch Ethan's fist in his throat, followed by a knee to the temple. Down. Ethan ripped the blindfolds off the girls. Leah's eyes went wide, tears streaming. He pressed a finger to his lips, stay quiet, and cut their bonds with a knife from the unconscious guard's belt. Dad? Leah whispered, voice breaking. Not now, baby. Can you both run? They nodded. Emma was shaking so hard she could barely stand, but she was on her feet. Ethan pointed to the window he'd come through. That way. Out to the fence. There's a car parked down the street. He pulled out his keys, pressed them into Leah's hand. Lock yourselves in and call 911. Don't come back no matter what you hear. Understand? But Mom, Emma started. I'll get her. Go now. The girls ran, silent and terrified, disappearing through the window. Ethan waited until he saw them clear the fence, then turned back toward the voices at the front of the warehouse. Not going to ask again. Where's the evidence? Safe place. Encrypted. You'll never find it without me. Then you'll take us to it, after we're done making an example of what happens to people who cross us. Ethan moved through the shadows, assessing the situation. 3 men at the front, 2 with guns, 1 without. The unarmed one was doing the talking, tall and silver-haired. Ethan recognized him from somewhere, couldn't place it. Sophia stood between them, lip bleeding, but unbowed. You're making a mistake, she said. The FBI knows about you. Agent Victoria Chase has been investigating the corruption network for months. Kidnapping my daughter was the evidence she needed to bring you all down. Silverhair smiled. Agent Chase is currently investigating a suspicious death in Tacoma. She won't be available for hours, and by then, you and your little safety crusade will be fish food in the Sound. That's when Ethan recognized him. The man from the parking garage, the one who'd tried to kill Sophia with a knife before Ethan intervened. He'd been working for Reynolds, but Reynolds was in prison, which meant someone else had taken over, someone higher up the chain. Ethan had 2 options. Wait for Agent Chase and hope she arrived before they killed Sophia, or act now and hope he was still fast enough to save her. The SEAL in him knew the answer before his conscious mind did. He stepped out of the shadows. Sophia's right, he said quietly. You're making a mistake. All three men spun toward him, weapons rising. Silverhair's eyes widened in recognition, then narrowed in fury. Ward, I should have killed you in that parking garage. Probably, but you didn't. Ethan's voice was calm, deadly. Now you've got a choice. Walk away or go down fighting. Either way, those girls are gone. They're safe. And the evidence you're so worried about? Already in FBI hands. You lost. It was a bluff, the girls were safe, but the evidence was still at the center. But Silverhair didn't know that. Ethan watched doubt flicker across his face. He's lying, one of the gunmen said. The girls are right behind. He turned, saw the empty chairs. Shit, they're gone. Find them, Silverhair snapped. Now! The two gunmen ran toward the back of the warehouse, which left Silverhair alone with Ethan and Sophia. Bad odds for Silverhair. He seemed to realize it, reaching for a weapon hidden under his jacket. Ethan moved first, closed the distance in 3 strides, caught Silverhair's wrist before the gun cleared leather, twisted hard enough to break bone. The weapon clattered to the floor. Silverhair screamed, threw a wild punch with his left hand. Ethan blocked, countered with strikes to the solar plexus and jaw, and Silverhair went down hard. Sophia, run! Ethan shouted. But she was already moving, not toward the exit, but toward the fallen gun. She picked it up, hands shaking, pointing it at Silverhair as he tried to rise. Don't move, she said. I mean it. Don't you dare move. You won't shoot, Silverhair gasped, clutching his broken wrist. You're not a killer, Ms. Grant. You're a CEO playing at redemption. You're right. I'm not a killer. Sophia's finger moved to the trigger. But I'm a mother, and you tried to hurt my daughter. The gunshot echoed through the warehouse. Sophia had aimed low. Hit Silverhair in the thigh, non-lethal, but incapacitating. He screamed, collapsing, blood pooling beneath him. She lowered the gun, staring at it like she couldn't believe what she'd just done. Ethan heard boots pounding concrete, the 2 guards coming back. He grabbed Sophia's arm, pulled her toward the exit. Time to go. They ran, bursting through the front door into morning sunlight, across the abandoned plant grounds toward the fence. Behind them, gunfire erupted, bullets sparking off rusted metal, thudding into dirt. Ethan shielded Sophia with his body, feeling the hot whistle of rounds passing inches away. They hit the fence at full sprint, scrambling over chain link while more shots rang out. Ethan's jacket caught, tore. Sophia's hand slipped, and she nearly fell. He caught her, hauled her up and over, and they dropped to the other side just as a bullet punched through the fence where her head had been. They ran to the car where Leah and Emma huddled in the back seat. Ethan dove into the driver's seat, started the engine, and floored it. The rear windshield exploded as a final shot found its mark, but then they were around a corner, out of range, speeding toward downtown Seattle in safety. Nobody spoke for 5 minutes, just ragged breathing, shock settling in, the reality of what had just happened crashing down. Finally, Sophia turned around in her seat to look at the girls. Emma? Baby, are you okay? Emma burst into tears, reaching for her mother. Sophia unclipped her seatbelt, climbed into the back, and held her daughter tight. Beside them, Leah was crying too, silent, shaking sobs. Ethan met her eyes in the rear-view mirror. I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry I let this happen. You saved us, Leah whispered. You came for us, just like you promised you always would. His vision blurred. He blinked hard, focused on driving. We need to get to a police station. Those men will be calling for backup, trying to run. We need to make sure Agent Chase knows. His phone rang. Chase's number. Tell me you got my message, Ethan said immediately. I got it. SWAT team is en route to Plant 7 now. Are the girls safe? Yes, we have them, but the kidnappers know we're coming. They'll scatter. Then they'll scatter into a net. I've got units at every bridge, every major highway. No one's leaving Seattle today. A pause. Mr. Ward, Ms. Grant, what you did was incredibly stupid and incredibly brave. Meet me at FBI headquarters. We'll need full statements. Understood. We're coming in now. He hung up. In the back seat, Sophia was still holding Emma, whispering reassurances, checking her for injuries. Emma's wrists were raw from the ropes, her face pale with shock, but she was alive. She was safe. Thank you, Sophia said to Ethan. voice thick with emotion. If you hadn't come, you came too. You walked into that warehouse knowing they'd probably kill you. That was the bravest thing I've ever seen. I had to. She's my daughter. Sophia kissed Emma's head. I'd walk into hell for her. I know. Ethan glanced at Leah in the mirror again. That's what it means to be a parent. You do whatever it takes. They spent the next 6 hours at FBI headquarters, giving statements, identifying suspects, walking investigators through every detail of the kidnapping and rescue. Agent Chase worked tirelessly, coordinating with SWAT teams, analyzing evidence, building an airtight case. By late afternoon, she had good news. We got them, she said, walking into the conference room where Ethan and Sophia waited. All 3 men at Plant 7, including your silver-haired friend, whose real name is William Mercer, former military contractor, current fixer for a network of corrupt officials. He's singing like a canary. Will he testify? Sophia asked. With a bullet in his leg and facing 25 to life for kidnapping? Absolutely. He's already given us names, city councilmen, union bosses, corporate executives. This is going to blow apart the entire corruption network. Agent Chase smiled grimly. You two just became the FBI's star witnesses. What about our daughters? Ethan asked. They saw things, heard things. Will they have to testify? Possibly, but we'll do everything to protect them. Counseling, security, whatever they need. Chase hesitated. I won't lie. This is going to be a long process. Trials could take months, maybe years. These people will try to intimidate you, discredit you, maybe even come after you again. Are you prepared for that? Ethan looked at Sophia. She looked back. And in that moment, something passed between them. Understanding, partnership, maybe even the beginnings of trust. We're prepared, they said together. The grand opening of the Phoenix Response Center happened on a Tuesday morning, 6 weeks after the kidnapping. 6 weeks of FBI protection, of therapy sessions for both girls, of media coverage that painted Ethan and Sophia as unlikely heroes who'd taken down a corruption network spanning 2 decades. The story had everything: corporate greed, redemption arcs, kidnapped children, a dramatic rescue. Cable news couldn't get enough of it. But standing backstage now, listening to the crowd gather in the transformed warehouse, Ethan felt nothing like a hero. He felt tired, scared, and completely unprepared for what was about to happen. 243 people out there, Marcus Chen said, clipboard in hand, looking remarkably recovered for someone who'd been jumped in a stairwell 6 weeks ago. He'd insisted on handling security for the opening despite his injuries, said he owed them that much. Media, donors, city officials, and about 40 family members of workplace accident victims. Some of them are Plant 7 families. Ethan's stomach dropped. How many? 7 families. They RSVP'd last week. Marcus paused. They know you'll be speaking. They know Sophia will too. I can have extra security near the stage if you're worried about... No. Ethan straightened his tie, a foreign feeling after years of grease-stained Henleys. Sophia had insisted he wear a suit for today, said if they were going to face the families, they needed to show respect. If they want to confront us, they've earned that right. Sophia appeared from the other side of the stage, also dressed formally, simple black dress, no jewelry except for a pin with 14 names engraved on it. The names of the workers who died. She wore their memory like armor. The girls are in the front row with Agent Chase, she said quietly. Emma's still shaky, but she wanted to be here, said we needed the support. How's Leah? Holding Vanessa Chen's hand like a lifeline. Sophia managed a small smile. Vanessa Chen, widow of Michael Chen, who died in the Plant 7 explosion, had become an unexpected ally. After Ethan and Sophia exposed the corruption network, Vanessa had reached out, saying she'd known all along that Ethan wasn't responsible. She'd attended every FBI briefing, every court hearing, becoming a fierce advocate for workplace safety reform. Vanessa told her that being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means being scared and doing it anyway. Smart woman. Ethan checked his watch. 5 minutes until they were supposed to start. 5 minutes until he faced the people whose loved ones he'd failed to save. Sophia, if this goes badly, if they're too angry, if they can't hear what we're trying to say, then we let them be angry. We stand there and take it, because that's what we owe them. She touched his arm gently. But I don't think it will go badly. These families came here because they want change, not revenge. They want what we're building to mean something. How can you be sure? Because I talked to them. All 7 families. Called them personally over the past 2 weeks. Listened to their stories, their pain, and their anger at me. And I asked them what they needed. What would actually help, not just make me feel better. Her voice was steady despite the tremor in her hands. Some wanted apologies. Some wanted financial compensation beyond the lawsuit settlement. Some just wanted to know that their loved ones' deaths wouldn't be forgotten. So I'm giving them all of that today. Before Ethan could respond, the lights dimmed. Marcus appeared at the curtain, nodded. Showtime. They walked onto the stage together, facing a crowd that fell silent as 243 pairs of eyes locked onto them. Ethan saw reporters with cameras ready. City officials in expensive suits, probably worried about what would be revealed today. Donors who'd funded the center despite the controversy. And there, in the middle section, 7 families wearing photographs pinned to their clothes, faces of the dead watching the living. Sophia stepped to the microphone first. Her hands gripped the podium so hard her knuckles went white, but her voice didn't shake. My name is Sophia Grant. 2 years and 37 days ago, I made the worst decision of my life. I was told that one of my facilities was unsafe, that workers were in danger, that an explosion was inevitable if we didn't shut down immediately. And I chose profit over people. I chose my ego over evidence. I chose to fire the man who tried to warn me rather than admit I'd made a mistake. She paused, looking directly at the families wearing photographs. 63 days later, 14 people died because of that choice. 14 fathers, sons, brothers, husbands. 14 people who went to work that day trusting that their employer valued their lives. I betrayed that trust. I destroyed families, and I let an innocent man take the blame because facing my own guilt was too painful. A woman in the audience stood up. She was in her 50s, wearing a photograph of a young man with a bright smile. That was my son, Daniel Martinez. He was 26. He had a daughter who was 3 months old when he died. She's 2.5 now, and she'll never remember her father because of you. The room held its breath. Sophia didn't look away, didn't defend herself. Mrs. Martinez, I know. I've thought about Daniel every day since the explosion. I've thought about his daughter growing up without him, and I know that nothing I say or do will bring him back. But I want you to know that this center exists because of Daniel, because of all 14 men who died. They're the reason I'm trying to change how we think about workplace safety. Mrs. Martinez's hands shook. My son died alone in that explosion, trapped in the rubble for 6 hours before they found his body. The last thing he did was send me a text saying he loved me, and he was scared. Do you know what that's like? Reading your child's final words? No. Sophia's voice broke. I can't imagine that pain. But I can tell you that 6 weeks ago, my daughter was kidnapped by people trying to stop this center from opening. For 6 hours, I didn't know if she was alive or dead. For 6 hours, I lived with the possibility that I'd never see her again. And in those 6 hours, I finally understood what I'd done to you, what I'd taken from you. That terror, that helplessness. You've lived with it for 2 years because of me. Mrs. Martinez sat down slowly, tears streaming. Another person stood, an older man with a photograph of someone who looked like him, maybe 40 years old. My brother, Thomas Reeves, the electrician. He was supposed to retire in 3 months. He and his wife were going to travel, see the country, finally relax after 40 years of hard work. The man's voice was rough with grief. Instead, I had to identify his body, had to tell his wife that the company she trusted, the safety protocols she believed in, were all lies. Mr. Reeves. This time Ethan spoke, stepping forward. I met your brother, twice. Once during a routine safety inspection, and once when he pulled me aside to tell me about pressure valve irregularities he'd noticed. He documented everything properly, filed reports, did exactly what he was supposed to do. And I took those reports to management, begged them to investigate. They ignored him. They ignored me. And then they fired me for being too persistent. The man stared at Ethan. Your ward, the mechanic they blamed. Yes, sir. I tried to save your brother. I tried to save all of them. I failed. But you tried. That's more than she did. He gestured at Sophia. You fought for them. She destroyed you for it. She did. And I spent 2 years hating her for it. But hate doesn't bring them back. It doesn't make workplaces safer. It doesn't prevent the next explosion, the next tragedy, the next family destroyed. Ethan's voice was steady now, finding strength in the truth. So I made a choice. I could spend the rest of my life bitter and angry, or I could use what happened to me, what happened to your brother, to create something that actually protects workers. This center is that choice. A third person stood, a woman in her 30s with 2 small children clinging to her legs. My husband, Robert Kim. He was 34. These are his daughters. They were 4 and 6 when he died. They still ask when Daddy's coming home. Her voice was hollow. How does this center bring my husband back? How does it help my daughters grow up without a father? Sophia left the podium, walked down the steps, and approached the woman directly. Security tensed, but Sophia waved them back. She knelt in front of the 2 girls, eye level with them. Hi, I'm Sophia. What are your names? The older girl whispered, Jessica. And I'm Amy, the younger one said, less shy. Jessica and Amy. Those are beautiful names. Sophia's eyes were bright with unshed tears. Your daddy was a hero. Did you know that? He worked hard every day to help build things that people needed. And he was brave and kind and loved you very much. Mommy says he's in heaven, Amy said. I believe that too. And I believe he's watching over you right now, making sure you're safe and happy. Sophia looked up at their mother. Mrs. Kim, I can't bring Robert back. I can't give your daughters their father. But I can promise you this. Every person who walks through the doors of this center will learn Robert's story. They'll see his picture on our memorial wall. They'll understand that workplace safety isn't about regulations and inspections. It's about fathers coming home to their daughters. And if we can save even one family from the pain you've endured, then Robert's death will mean something. Mrs. Kim was crying now, silent tears that she didn't wipe away. Do you mean that? Or is this just publicity? I mean it with everything I am, and I'm backing it up with money, resources, and the rest of my life. Sophia stood, addressed the entire crowd now. I've liquidated my personal fortune, $800 million, to fund this center and compensate victims' families. I've lost my position as CEO, lost most of my company, lost everything I spent 20 years building. Some people think that's punishment enough. I don't. Because my daughter is still alive. My family is still intact. I get to wake up every morning and make choices. Those 14 men don't have that anymore. So this isn't punishment, it's penance. And I'll spend every day I have left trying to earn back even a fraction of the trust I destroyed. The room was silent for a long moment. Then Mrs. Martinez stood again. I don't forgive you, she said clearly. I can't. My son is gone forever, and no amount of money or centers or speeches will change that. But she looked at the memorial wall with its 14 photographs. But I don't want Daniel's death to be meaningless. I don't want other mothers to lose their sons the way I lost mine. So if this place can prevent that, if it can actually make a difference, then I'll support it. Not for you, for the next Daniel Martinez who deserves to come home safe. One by one, the other family members stood. Some spoke, some just nodded. Some were still too angry to offer anything but silence. But they stayed. They listened. And when Sophia finished her speech, outlining the center's programs, its goals, its commitment to transparency and accountability, they stayed for that too. The formal program lasted 90 minutes. Speeches from city officials, safety experts, Vanessa Chen speaking about her late husband's passion for workplace advocacy. Agent Victoria Chase made a surprise appearance, announcing that the FBI's investigation had led to 47 arrests, the shutdown of 3 corrupt inspection agencies, and criminal charges against 12 corporate executives beyond Charles Reynolds. None of this would have been possible without Ms. Grant's cooperation and Mr. Ward's courage, Chase said from the podium. They've set a new standard for corporate accountability and whistleblower protection. This center represents everything that should exist in our society. People choosing to do what's right, even when it costs them everything. When the speeches ended, the crowd was invited to tour the facility. Ethan and Sophia stationed themselves at the memorial wall, available for anyone who wanted to talk. Some people avoided them. Others approached tentatively, asking questions about programs, expressing cautious hope. A few were openly hostile. One man spat at Sophia's feet, called her a murderer, walked out. She stood there, let him go, didn't defend herself. Leah and Emma stayed close to their parents, still processing their own trauma from the kidnapping, but trying to be brave. Emma held her mother's hand so tightly that Sophia's fingers went white. Leah shadowed her father, watching every stranger with suspicious eyes. "They'll be okay," Vanessa Chen said quietly, approaching Ethan. "My kids were younger when Michael died, but they had nightmares for months. Professional counseling helped. Time helped. Knowing that their father's death meant something, that helped most of all." "How are they now?" "Graduating high school, planning for college, living their lives. They still miss him, but they're not defined by that loss anymore." She smiled sadly. "Your daughters are strong. They'll heal." "I hope you're right." "I am. Trust me. I'm a professional griever at this point." Vanessa looked around the center at the classrooms and training stations and memorial wall. "You've built something good here, Ethan. Michael would have loved this place." "I wish I'd been able to save him." "You tried. That's more than most people did." She squeezed his arm. "Now you're making sure no one else has to die the way he did. That's not nothing." As the afternoon wore on, the crowd thinned. Media left to file their stories. Officials departed with promises of support. Families wandered through exhibits, some leaving contact information, others just processing their emotions. By evening, only a handful of people remained. That's when Sophia's phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her answer. "Ms. Grant?" The voice was male, professional, unfamiliar. "Yes. Who is this?" "My name is Richard Holbrook. I'm an attorney representing someone who's been following your case closely. My client would like to speak with you about the Phoenix Response Center. Are you available for a meeting?" Sophia's instincts screamed danger. "Who's your client?" "I'd rather discuss that in person. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., at the Fairmont Hotel downtown. Suite 1847. My client is prepared to make a substantial donation to your center, $50 million, but would like to discuss terms first." $50 million. Enough to expand the center nationwide, to triple their programs, to help thousands of families. Sophia's heart raced. "I'll need to bring security." "Of course, my client expects nothing less. See you tomorrow, Ms. Grant." He hung up before she could ask more questions. Sophia stared at her phone, torn between hope and suspicion. "What's wrong?" Ethan appeared at her side, reading her expression. "You look like you've seen a ghost." She told him about the call. His jaw tightened. "It's a trap." "Maybe. Or maybe it's a legitimate donor." "Sophia, we just took down a corruption network that included some of the wealthiest people in Seattle. You think one of them wants to give us $50 million out of the goodness of their heart?" "I think we need that money, and I think we can protect ourselves." She met his eyes. "Come with me. You, me, Agent Chase if she's available. We go in prepared for anything." Ethan wanted to refuse, wanted to tell her it was too dangerous, too soon after the kidnapping, but he saw the determination in her face, the same determination that had walked into a warehouse full of armed men to save their daughters. "Fine, but I'm bringing Marcus Chen too. And if anything feels off, we leave immediately." Agreed. They called Agent Chase, who was equally suspicious, but agreed to attend. The next morning, the four of them arrived at the Fairmont Hotel at 9:55 a.m., Ethan and Marcus carrying concealed weapons, Chase wearing her FBI credentials prominently, Sophia trying to project confidence she didn't feel. Suite 1847 was on the top floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay. The door was answered by Richard Holbrook, who looked exactly like his voice suggested, mid-50s, expensive suit, practiced smile. "Ms. Grant, Mr. Ward, Agent Chase. Thank you for coming. My client is waiting inside." He led them through an elegant sitting room to a private office, and there, seated behind a mahogany desk, was a woman Sophia recognized immediately, Victoria Preston, CEO of Preston Industries, one of the largest construction firms on the West Coast. A woman worth an estimated $3 billion, and someone who'd been named in the FBI investigation as having received consulting fees from Charles Reynolds' corruption network, Though nothing had been proven, no charges filed. Sophia stopped in the doorway. You. Victoria Preston smiled. She was in her 60s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, wearing a power suit that probably cost more than most people's cars. Ms. Grant, please sit. We have much to discuss. I'm not sitting down with someone who profited from the corruption that killed 14 workers. Then you're not walking out of here with $50 million that could save hundreds more. Victoria's smile didn't waver. Your choice. Agent Chase stepped forward. Ms. Preston, if you have information relevant to our ongoing investigation, I have nothing relevant to your investigation, Agent Chase. All charges against me were dropped due to lack of evidence. I'm here as a private citizen making a donation to a worthy cause. She gestured to the chairs. Now please, sit, or leave and explain to your donors why you turned down the largest contribution in your center's history. Ethan and Sophia exchanged glances. Marcus positioned himself by the door, hand near his concealed weapon. After a tense moment, they sat. Thank you. Victoria folded her hands on the desk. Let me be direct. I did business with Charles Reynolds. I paid him consulting fees that circumvented proper safety regulations. I profited from the corruption you exposed, and I would do it again. Then why are you here? Sophia's voice was ice. Because the world has changed. Your little crusade, your confession, your dramatic rescue of kidnapped children. It's captured public attention in ways that make the old system untenable. Regulators are watching. Media is scrutinizing. Shareholders are demanding accountability. The game has new rules, and I'm adapting to them. So this is a PR move. Buy your way into looking ethical. This is business. My company needs to demonstrate commitment to workplace safety or face boycotts, lawsuits, and regulatory crackdowns. Your center provides perfect optics, reformed CEO, and vindicated whistleblower working together to prevent tragedies. If Preston Industries is your biggest donor, we benefit from that association. Victoria pulled out a contract. $50 million over 5 years. In exchange, we get prominent placement of our logo on your materials, speaking opportunities at your events, and consultation on your safety curriculum to ensure it reflects real-world construction challenges. You want to control what we teach? Ethan's voice was flat. I want to ensure you're not teaching impractical idealism that makes construction impossible. Safety matters, Mr. Ward, but so does building things on time and on budget. Surely we can find a balance. The balance is what killed 14 people. Sophia stood. Thank you for the offer, Ms. Preston, but we're not interested in money with strings attached, especially from someone who helped create the problem we're trying to solve. Sit down, Ms. Grant. I'm not finished. I am. Sophia headed for the door. Ethan and Chase followed. You're making a mistake, Victoria called after them. That $50 million could change everything. You could expand nationally, help thousands of workers. All I'm asking for is a seat at the table. Sophia paused at the door, looked back. The 14 men on our memorial wall don't get a seat at the table anymore. They don't get to see their children grow up, don't get to retire, don't get to live their lives. That's the cost of your balance, Ms. Preston, and we're not interested in repeating it. They left, walking through the hotel lobby in tense silence. Marcus scanned for threats. Chase made notes on her phone. Ethan and Sophia didn't speak until they were in the parking garage, safely away from listening ears. $50 million, Ethan said quietly. We could have done a lot of good with that money. Not if it came with her strings attached. The moment we let someone like Preston influence our curriculum, we compromise everything we stand for. Sophia leaned against their car, suddenly exhausted. We'll find other donors. Better donors. Will we? You've already liquidated your fortune. I have nothing to offer. Most corporations see us as troublemakers. We're running on grants and small donations right now. Then we make that enough. We start small, grow slowly, build our reputation through results instead of big checks from corrupt executives. She met his eyes. Unless you think I made the wrong call? Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Then, no, you made the right call. I want this center to succeed so badly that for a second I considered compromising. That's dangerous. It is, which is why we need to stay vigilant, both of us. and remind each other what this is really about. Agent Chase joined them, pocketing her phone. I just spoke to the prosecutor handling the Preston Industries investigation. They're very interested in the fact that Victoria just tried to buy influence over a workplace safety organization. Might be enough to reopen her case. Will it stick? Sophia asked. Maybe. Maybe not. But at minimum, it'll keep her under scrutiny. Chase smiled grimly. You two did good in there. Not everyone would have walked away from that much money. Yeah, well, Ethan opened the car door. Turns out some things aren't for sale. The rejection of Preston's money made headlines. Phoenix Center turns down $50 million from controversial CEO. Media couldn't decide if it was principled or stupid. Some donors pulled support, worried about the center's financial stability. Others stepped forward, inspired by their refusal to compromise. Within a week, they'd received $8 million in new donations from unions, safety advocacy groups, and individuals who believed in what they were building. Not $50 million, but enough. Enough to keep the doors open, to expand their programs, to hire more instructors. The real breakthrough came 3 weeks later when Vanessa Chen walked into Ethan's office with a proposal. I want to work here, she said without preamble. Full-time, developing family support programs for workplace accident victims. Ethan looked up from his paperwork. Vanessa, we can't afford. I don't need much, just enough to cover childcare and basic expenses. Michael's life insurance and the lawsuit settlement are enough for us to live on. But I need purpose. I need to feel like his death meant something. She sat down across from him. You gave me that when you built this place. Let me give it back to other families. Are you sure? This work, it's going to be emotionally brutal. Every day you'll be meeting people living through the same trauma you experienced. I know, but who better to help them than someone who understands? Someone who knows what it's like to bury a husband, to tell children their father isn't coming home, to navigate grief while the company responsible tries to deny responsibility? Her voice was steady. I can do this, Ethan. I need to do this. He studied her for a moment. This woman who'd lost so much but refused to let bitterness consume her. Okay, but we start you part-time, see how it goes. And the moment it becomes too much, you tell me. Deal? Deal. Vanessa became the center's heart. She created support groups for widows and widowers, developed resources for children grieving lost parents, partnered with therapists to provide free counseling. Within months, families who'd suffered workplace tragedies across the state were reaching out, asking for help, sharing their stories. The center grew, not in flashy ways, but in ways that mattered. A construction worker used their training to identify a structural flaw that would have collapsed a building. A factory foreman called their hotline to report unsafe conditions, triggering an OSHA investigation that saved lives. A union adopted their curriculum for mandatory safety training. Ethan and Sophia settled into an uneasy partnership. They weren't friends, too much history, too much pain between them, but they respected each other, trusted each other's judgment, and slowly, carefully, they learned to work together without the weight of the past crushing every interaction. Their daughters, meanwhile, formed an unexpected bond. Emma and Leah had survived trauma together, shared nightmares about the warehouse, attended therapy sessions side by side. Sophia enrolled Emma in the same school as Leah, figuring they needed stability and familiar faces. The girls became inseparable. They're like sisters, Sophia remarked one afternoon, watching Emma and Leah work on homework together in the center's break room. Trauma bonding, Ethan said. It's common in survivors. Maybe, but I think it's more than that. They genuinely like each other. Emma's been happier these past few months than she has in years. Leah, too. After Jenny died, she withdrew from everyone. Now she's... He paused, voice catching. She's laughing again. I forgot what that sounded like. Sophia glanced at him. You're doing better, too. Am I? You are. When I first showed up at your apartment, you looked like you were barely holding yourself together. Now you look like someone who's found a reason to keep fighting. Ethan didn't respond immediately. When he did, his voice was quiet. I spent 2 years drowning. In grief, in anger, in the injustice of what you did to me. Building this center, it gave me something to hold on to. A life raft. And I'm not sure if I should thank you for that or resent you for being the reason I needed it. Both, probably. That's fair. They stood in comfortable silence, watching their daughter's work. Then Emma looked up, saw her mother watching, and smiled. A real smile, bright and unguarded. Sophia's breath caught. She used to smile like that all the time, she whispered. Before the divorce, before the scandal, before I destroyed everything. I thought I'd never see it again. You will. Kids are resilient. They heal faster than we do. I hope you're right. A commotion outside interrupted them, raised voices, the sound of breaking glass. Ethan and Sophia ran to the front entrance, where Marcus Chen was restraining a man in his 30s who'd thrown a brick through their window. You destroyed my father's company, the man shouted, struggling against Marcus's grip. Grant Tech audit triggered investigations that shut down 6 firms, including his. 100 people lost jobs because of your self-righteous crusade. Security arrived. Off-duty cops they'd hired after the kidnapping. They took custody of the man, leading him away still shouting threats. Ethan and Sophia surveyed the damage, shattered glass across the lobby floor, a brick with murderers spray-painted on it sitting in the debris. This is the 3rd incident this month, Marcus said grimly. Vandalism, threats, that suspicious fire in the dumpster last week. Someone's escalating. Charles Reynolds' network? Sophia asked. Maybe. Or just people who've lost money because of our work. Corruption's profitable. We're costing a lot of people a lot of cash. Marcus pulled out his phone. I'm calling for a full security assessment. We need cameras, better locks, maybe even armed guards. Armed guards at a workplace safety center? Ethan shook his head. That sends the wrong message. What message does a brick through the window send, that we're easy targets? Marcus's voice was sharp. Your daughters visit this building regularly. My wife volunteers here. Vanessa's kids attend our family programs. We can't protect our mission if we're not here to carry it out. He was right. Ethan knew he was right. But admitting they needed that level of security felt like admitting they were at war, and wars had casualties. Do it, Sophia said quietly. Enhanced security, whatever it costs. I'll cover it personally. With what money? You liquidated everything. I still have assets, investments, property, things I can liquidate. This center stays safe, no matter what it costs me. That night, after everyone else had gone home, Ethan and Sophia stayed late to clean up the glass. They worked in silence, sweeping and disposing of the debris, boarding up the broken window until a contractor could replace it tomorrow. I keep thinking about what that man said, Sophia finally spoke. That we destroyed his father's company. Maybe he's right. Maybe our crusade for accountability has gone too far. His father's company failed safety inspections repeatedly. They got shut down because they were endangering workers, not because we exposed them. Ethan dumped another dustpan of glass into the trash. We didn't destroy anything that wasn't already broken. But what about the workers who lost their jobs? They weren't responsible for management's corruption. Now they're unemployed because we demanded accountability. Would you rather we'd stayed quiet? Let those companies keep operating unsafely until more people died? No, but... Sophia set down her broom. I just wonder if there's a middle path, a way to demand change without destroying livelihoods. If you figure it out, let me know, because I've been asking that question for 2 years and I still don't have an answer. Ethan leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. All I know is that those 14 men on our memorial wall don't get second chances. They don't get to rebuild their companies or find new jobs. They're gone forever. So yeah, I'll take some economic disruption if it means preventing more deaths. Even if it makes us targets? Even then. Sophia studied him for a long moment. You really believe that? I have to. It's the only way I can live with myself. He met her eyes. Don't you? She thought about the question, really thought about it. About the man who'd thrown the brick, whose father had lost everything. About the workers unemployed because of investigations she'd triggered. About the cost of justice and the price of redemption. Yes, she finally said. I believe it too, even when it terrifies me. The security upgrades took 2 weeks. Cameras on every entrance, reinforced locks, Panic buttons in every room, off-duty police officers rotating through 8-hour shifts. It felt excessive, like they were fortifying a bunker instead of running a non-profit. But no more bricks came through windows. No more threats went unanswered. Then, on a Friday afternoon exactly 3 months after the grand opening, Agent Victoria Chase called with news that changed everything. "We got him," she said without preamble. "The head of the whole operation, not Charles Reynolds, his boss. The person who orchestrated everything from the corruption network to the kidnapping." Ethan put her on speakerphone so Sophia could hear. "Who?" "Frederick Morrison, retired city councilman, current board member of 7 major corporations, including Preston Industries. He's been running this network for 23 years. Bribes, kickbacks, contract rigging, you name it. And when you two started exposing everything, he's the one who ordered you silenced." Sophia's face went pale. "I know Frederick Morrison. He came to my office twice, trying to convince me to drop the Phoenix Center project. Said it was bad for business, bad for Seattle, that I was being vindictive. He was protecting his empire, and when you wouldn't back down, he authorized the kidnapping." Chase's voice was grim. "We have recordings, financial records, testimony from William Mercer. Morrison's going down for racketeering, conspiracy, kidnapping, and about 40 other charges. He'll die in prison." "Good," Ethan said flatly. "When's the arrest?" "Tonight. We're hitting his home at 8 p.m. Thought you might want to watch from the surveillance van, see this through to the end." They arrived at the designated location at 7:45 p.m., a quiet residential street in Madison Park, where Frederick Morrison lived in a mansion worth $15 million. The FBI surveillance van was parked 3 houses down, filled with agents and monitoring equipment. "He's home," Chase told them, pointing to screens showing thermal imaging of the house. "Alone. Security team dismissed an hour ago. We made sure they got anonymous tips about a gas leak, called them away." "You set this up carefully," Sophia observed. "Morrison's smart and well-connected. We only get one shot at this. If we screw it up, he disappears into a country with no extradition treaty, and we never see him again." At exactly 8 p.m., FBI teams moved in. Front door, back door, synchronized entry. Through the surveillance feed, they watched agents swarm the house, weapons drawn, shouting commands. Frederick Morrison appeared on screen, dignified even in pajamas, hands raised, not resisting. But his face showed no fear, no surprise, just calculation. "He knew we were coming," Ethan said. "Probably, but he also knows fighting makes it worse." Chase listened to updates through her earpiece. "Clear, clear, all rooms secure, subject in custody, no incidents." They brought Morrison out in handcuffs 10 minutes later. As he passed the surveillance van, he looked directly at it, at the window where he somehow knew Sophia and Ethan were watching. And he smiled. The smile said, "This isn't over." The arrest made international news. Seattle corruption network exposed. Billionaire council orchestrated 20-year criminal enterprise. The fall of Frederick Morrison. Media swarmed the Phoenix Center, requesting interviews, wanting reactions. Sophia and Ethan gave a joint statement. Frederick Morrison and people like him represent everything the Phoenix Response Center was built to fight against. Corporate greed, systemic corruption, the belief that profits matter more than people. Today's arrest shows that no one is above accountability, no matter how powerful, how wealthy, how well-connected. We're grateful to the FBI and to every whistleblower who risked everything to expose the truth. Public response was overwhelmingly positive. Donations poured in. Politicians expressed support. Corporations that had distanced themselves from the center suddenly wanted partnerships. But Ethan couldn't shake Morrison's smile. That calculation, that confidence. "He's not done," he told Sophia 3 days after the arrest. "He's planning something. He's in federal custody awaiting trial. What can he do?" "I don't know, but men like Morrison don't go down quietly." Ethan was right. 1 week after Morrison's arrest, the center received an anonymous package. Inside was a laptop containing hundreds of files. Emails, documents, photographs, all of them showing questionable financial decisions Sophia had made as CEO of Grant Tech. Decisions that, while not illegal, looked terrible in context. Bonuses paid to executives while cutting worker safety budgets. Expensive corporate retreats funded by shell companies. Payments to consultants who did no actual work. A note was included. If you proceed with testimony against Frederick Morrison, these files go public. Your redemption arc becomes a fraud. The Phoenix Center loses credibility. Everyone loses. Drop the charges, and these files disappear forever. Sophia stared at the laptop, feeling her carefully rebuilt reputation crumbling. These are all real. I approved every one of these transactions. They were legal, but they look horrible, Ethan finished. Morrison's playing his final card. Destroy your credibility, destroy the center's mission. Maybe I should step down, remove myself from the center entirely, so this doesn't taint everything you've built. Absolutely not. That's exactly what he wants. To divide us. To make you doubt yourself. To prove that powerful men always win. Ethan's jaw was set. We're not giving him that satisfaction. But if these files go public, then we get ahead of them. We release them ourselves with full context before Morrison's people can weaponize them. He pulled out his phone. I'm calling Agent Chase. This is witness intimidation, evidence tampering. Morrison just added more charges to his list. They spent the next 48 hours working with the FBI and a crisis management team Sophia hired. They verified every document in the leaked files, prepared explanations for each questionable transaction, and then held a press conference. Sophia stood at the podium, the laptop open beside her, and said, Frederick Morrison wants to silence me by exposing mistakes I made as CEO. So I'm exposing them first. Here are files showing poor judgment, misplaced priorities, and decisions that prioritize profit over people. These transactions were legal but ethically questionable. I take full responsibility for them. They're part of why I built the Phoenix Center, to atone for the person I was and become someone better. Morrison thinks this destroys my credibility. I think it proves why accountability matters. The media response was mixed. Some praised her transparency. Others questioned whether someone with her history should be leading a workplace ethics organization. Donors debated. The board, now including Ethan, Vanessa Chen, and several family members of Plant 7 victims, held an emergency meeting. The question is trust, Marcus Chen said, presiding over the meeting. Can the public trust someone who made these decisions to lead this organization? The alternative is letting Morrison win, Vanessa countered. Letting him prove that exposing uncomfortable truths destroys you. That's not a precedent I want to set. They voted. 7 in favor of Sophia remaining, 3 against, 2 abstaining. She stayed, but the damage was done. Donations dropped. Media coverage turned skeptical. 3 major partnerships dissolved. The center, which had been growing steadily, suddenly faced an uncertain future. And Frederick Morrison, from his jail cell, smiled. The Phoenix Response Center limped through the next 3 months on life support. Donations that had once flowed steadily slowed to a trickle. Corporate sponsors who'd proudly displayed their logos on training materials quietly withdrew support. The staff, which had grown to 23 people at its peak, shrank to 11 as funding dried up and salaries became uncertain. Ethan worked without pay for 6 weeks straight. Sophia liquidated her last investment property, a condo in Vancouver she'd planned to retire in someday, just to make payroll. But the worst part wasn't the money. It was watching their mission crumble under the weight of public skepticism. Workers who'd once sought their training now questioned their legitimacy. Families who'd turned to them for support wondered if they were being exploited for publicity. The memorial wall with its 14 photographs remained, but fewer people stopped to read the names. We're dying, Marcus Chen said at a staff meeting on a gray Tuesday morning in November. Rain hammered the warehouse roof, matching everyone's mood. Not dramatically, just slowly bleeding out while Morrison watches from his cell and smiles. We're not dead yet, Ethan countered, but even he heard the hollowness in his voice. No, we're just hemorrhaging credibility and funding while our mission becomes a punchline. Last week, a construction supervisor told me his company banned our training materials because we're too controversial. We've become toxic. Marcus rubbed his tired eyes. Maybe it's time to admit Morrison won. He hasn't won. Sophia's voice cut through the defeatism like a blade. He's in federal custody facing 73 criminal charges. He'll spend the rest of his life in prison. That's not winning. But he destroyed what we built. That was his goal. If he couldn't silence us, he'd make sure nobody listened. Mission accomplished. Marcus gestured around the half-empty warehouse. Look at this place. We used to run 3 training sessions daily. Now we're lucky to fill 1 class a week. We used to have a waiting list for family support groups. Now Vanessa sits in empty rooms talking to ghosts. So we rebuild. Ethan stood, pacing. We've survived worse. The explosion, the cover-up, the kidnapping, we got through all of it. We can get through this. This is different. The speaker was Vanessa Chen herself, emerging from the back office where she'd been organizing files that fewer and fewer people requested. She looked exhausted, older than her 41 years. When we fought corruption, we had a clear enemy. When we rescued our daughters, we had something concrete to fight for. But this is death by 1,000 cuts. No dramatic showdowns, just slow erosion of everything we stand for. Then we find a way to make people care again, Sophia said. We remind them why this matters. But how? Another press conference? Another mea culpa where you confess your past sins? We've played that card. It's not working anymore. Vanessa's voice wasn't unkind, just honest. The truth is, people have short attention spans. 3 months ago, we were heroes. Now we're yesterday's news. And Morrison knew that. He didn't need to defeat us, just outlast the news cycle. The meeting dissolved into uncomfortable silence. Nobody had solutions. Nobody had hope. They were all just going through motions, trying to believe that purpose alone could keep the doors open. That night, Ethan stayed late again, reviewing financial projections that looked worse no matter how he crunched the numbers. At current burn rate, they had maybe 6 weeks before bankruptcy. 6 weeks to either find major funding or shut down permanently. 6 weeks until Frederick Morrison's smile became permanent. You should go home. Sophia's voice startled him. She stood in his doorway holding 2 cups of coffee from the corner shop, looking as worn down as he felt. Leah's probably wondering where you are. She's at a sleepover with Emma, your ex-husband's place. Ethan accepted the coffee gratefully. What are you doing here? Same thing you are, trying to figure out how to save something that might already be dead. She sat across from him, surveying the financial spreadsheets on his laptop. That bad? Worse. Even if we cut all non-essential expenses, we're looking at closure by mid-December, before Christmas. That's the legacy we leave, a center that couldn't last a year. My father used to say that legacy isn't measured in duration, it's measured in impact. We've trained over 800 workers in workplace safety. We've provided support to 43 families who'd lost loved ones in industrial accidents. We've helped expose the largest corruption network in Seattle history. Sophia's voice was quiet but firm. If we close tomorrow, that still matters. Does it? Or does it just prove that Morrison was right, that people like us can't change systems built by people like him? Ethan. Sophia waited until he looked at her. I've spent 2 years trying to atone for 14 deaths. I've lost my company, my fortune, my reputation, nearly lost my daughter. I've been called a murderer, a fraud, a corporate monster playing at redemption. And you know what? Some of that's deserved, but this center, what we've built together, that's real. The lives we've impacted are real. Don't let Morrison take that away from us. I'm not letting him take it. He just is. And I don't know how to stop him. Before Sophia could respond, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, frowned, and answered. Hello? Yes, this is Sophia Grant, who... Her expression shifted from confusion to shock. Are you serious? When? How many? A long pause. We'll be there. 30 minutes. Thank you. She hung up, staring at her phone like it had transformed into something alien. What? Ethan asked. What happened? That was Teresa Morrison, Frederick Morrison's wife. Sophia's voice was strange, distant. She wants to meet with us. Tonight, at her home. She says she has something that will help us. It's a trap. Probably. But she said... Sophia met his eyes. She said her husband destroyed enough lives, and she won't let him destroy more. She has evidence, documents he kept hidden even from his lawyers, and she wants to give them to us. Ethan wanted to refuse, wanted to tell Sophia that walking into Frederick Morrison's mansion was suicide, but desperation made people do foolish things, and they were very, very desperate. We bring Marcus, he said finally, and we tell Agent Chase where we're going. If it's a trap, at least someone knows where to find our bodies. They called Marcus, who arrived within 15 minutes looking simultaneously alert and annoyed. They called Agent Chase, who tried to talk them out of going, but eventually agreed to have agents on standby 3 blocks away. Then they drove to Madison Park, to the mansion where Morrison had been arrested 3 months earlier. Teresa Morrison answered the door herself. She was in her late 60s, elegant even in casual clothes, with the kind of poise that came from decades of navigating high society. But her eyes were red from crying, and her hands shook slightly as she gestured them inside. "Thank you for coming. I know this must seem suspicious." She led them through a marble foyer into a study lined with law books. On the desk sat a cardboard box sealed with tape. "My husband is a monster. I've known that for years, but told myself it was the price of the life we built, the wealth, the influence, the security. I looked away from so much because acknowledging it meant losing everything." "What changed?" Sophia asked gently. "Emma Grant, Leah Ward." Teresa's voice cracked. "When I learned my husband had orchestrated their kidnapping, that he'd authorized terrorizing children to protect his empire, I couldn't look away anymore. Those girls are the same age my granddaughters were when—" She stopped, composed herself. "Frederick tried to murder children, my husband, the man I've loved for 43 years. And I did nothing." "You're doing something now," Ethan said quietly. "Too late. Always too late. But maybe not entirely useless." Teresa gestured to the box. "These are Frederick's insurance files. Evidence he collected on every person in his network, proof of their crimes, leverage to ensure their silence, financial records, audio recordings, photographs. Enough to take down at least 50 more people involved in the corruption." Sophia stared at the box. Why didn't he destroy these when he was arrested? Because he thought he'd beat the charges. Thought his lawyers would find some technicality, some loophole. These files were his backup plan. If anyone turned on him, he'd destroy them first. Teresa's smile was bitter. He didn't count on his wife turning on him. "This could restart the investigation," Marcus said, already pulling out his phone to call the FBI. "With this evidence, we could—" "There's more." Teresa pulled out an envelope from her jacket pocket. "Inside are the names of 3 journalists Frederick was paying to write negative stories about your center. Planting doubts, amplifying criticisms, manufacturing controversy. He orchestrated your reputation crisis from prison." "How?" Ethan's jaw clenched. "He's in federal custody. How is he still running operations? Corrupt guards, lawyers who smuggle messages, associates who execute plans in his absence. Frederick's been building this network for 23 years. You think prison walls stop that?" Teresa handed the envelope to Sophia. "Expose these journalists. Show the public that your reputation crisis was manufactured. Maybe it helps. Maybe it doesn't, but at least it's the truth." Sophia took the envelope with trembling hands. "Why are you helping us? What do you gain?" "Nothing. I lose everything. My husband will die hating me. His associates will destroy my reputation. I'll be persona non grata in every circle that mattered to me." "But—" Teresa looked at the framed photographs on Morrison's desk. Her husband, her children, her grandchildren. A family built on blood money. "But maybe your daughters will grow up in a world where men like Frederick can't terrorize families with impunity. That's worth more than my comfort." They left with the box and envelope, Marcus handling both like they contained live explosives. In the car, nobody spoke until they were miles away from Morrison's mansion. "Could be fake," Marcus finally said. "Could be designed to discredit us further when it's revealed as fraudulent." "We'll verify everything before going public," Sophia said. "But if it's real, we just got the ammunition to destroy Morrison's entire network." Ethan's voice was hard. "And to prove that everything we've been fighting for matters." They spent the next 72 hours in lockdown at the center, working with Agent Chase and a team of FBI analysts to verify the contents of Teresa Morrison's files. Every document, every recording, every photograph was scrutinized, cross-referenced, authenticated. It was painstaking, exhausting work. But by the end of the 3rd day, Agent Chase delivered her verdict. "It's legitimate, all of it. Teresa Morrison just handed us the biggest corruption bust in Pacific Northwest history." Chase looked simultaneously thrilled and exhausted. We're talking senators, judges, corporate executives, union leaders, 53 people involved in a criminal enterprise that generated an estimated $2.3 billion in illegal profits over 2 decades. What happens now? Sophia asked. Now we build cases, execute warrants, make arrests. This will take months, maybe years to fully prosecute. But Ms. Grant, Mr. Ward, you just helped expose systemic corruption that most people spend entire careers trying to crack. Chase smiled, genuine and warm. The Phoenix Response Center just became one of the most important organizations in workplace safety reform. Your credibility is about to get a major boost. She was right. Within a week of the FBI announcing their expanded investigation, media coverage of the Phoenix Center shifted dramatically. Stories that had questioned their legitimacy now praised their persistence. Journalists who'd written hit pieces were themselves exposed as being on Morrison's payroll, their careers destroyed, their publications issuing embarrassed retractions. Donations resumed, then doubled, then tripled. Within a month, the center had more funding than at any point in its history. Corporations that had distanced themselves now fought to be associated with the organization that had taken down the most powerful corruption network in decades. But success brought new challenges. The warehouse that had felt too empty suddenly became too small. They needed more space, more staff, more resources to handle the demand. Training sessions that used to have 15 people now had waiting lists of 200. Family support groups expanded from one location to satellite offices across Washington state. We're drowning in success, Vanessa said at a staff meeting, looking simultaneously pleased and overwhelmed, which is a much better problem than dying from failure. But it's still a problem. We need to expand, Marcus agreed. Bigger facility, professional administration, maybe even franchising the model to other cities. All eyes turned to Ethan and Sophia. They'd been co-directors from the beginning, but the organizational structure had been informal, improvisational. Now they needed something more robust. We need a real board of directors, Sophia said. Not just friends and allies, but people with expertise in nonprofit management, workplace safety, organizational growth. People who can scale this beyond what Ethan and I built in a warehouse. We also need to decide on leadership, Ethan added. Right now, Sophia and I make decisions by consensus. That works for a small operation, but not for what we're becoming. We need clear hierarchy, defined roles, professional structure. The conversation continued for hours. They debated governance models, leadership structures, expansion strategies. It was tedious, necessary work, transforming a passion project into a sustainable institution. That evening, after everyone else had gone home, Ethan and Sophia stood in the empty warehouse, looking at the memorial wall with its 14 photographs. We did it, Sophia said quietly. We built something that matters, something that will outlast us. Because of them. Ethan touched one of the photographs, Tommy Reeves, the electrician whose brother had confronted them at the grand opening. They're the reason any of this exists. Do you think they'd be proud? Or would they see it as too little, too late? I think they'd be glad their deaths meant something. That's all any of us can hope for, that our lives or our deaths have meaning beyond ourselves. Ethan turned to face her. Sophia, we need to talk about leadership structure. I know. You should be executive director. You have the vision, the expertise, the moral authority. I can step back to an advisory role. No. Ethan's voice was firm. You're not stepping back. You're not hiding. We do this together, or not at all. But I'm the one who caused this. The explosion, the deaths, everything that made this center necessary. How can I lead an organization built on atoning for my sins? Because that's exactly why you should lead it. You know the cost of choosing profit over people. You've lived both sides. The corporate executive who ignored warnings and the reformed advocate trying to prevent others from making the same mistakes. That perspective is invaluable. Ethan moved closer. I can teach workplace safety. I can train inspectors and mechanics and engineers, but I can't speak to executives the way you can. I can't make them understand what they'll lose if they ignore safety concerns. That's your job. Sophia's eyes filled with tears. I don't deserve that trust. Maybe not. But our mission deserves the best leadership we can give it. And that's both of us. working together, using our different strengths to build something that protects workers. He extended his hand. Partners? She looked at his hand, the hand of the man she'd destroyed, who'd saved her life, who'd chosen to build with her instead of against her. Slowly she took it. Partners. They shook on it, a formal agreement to transform their uneasy alliance into genuine collaboration. It wouldn't erase the past, wouldn't bring back the 14 workers or Ethan's wife or the 2 years he'd lost. But it was a start. The next morning, they announced the new leadership structure. Ethan Ward and Sophia Grant would serve as co-executive directors. Vanessa Chen would become director of family services. Marcus Chen would head security and risk management. They hired professional staff for administration, fundraising, communications. The scrappy nonprofit became a real organization. They also announced their expansion plan. The Phoenix Response Center would open 5 satellite locations across Washington, Oregon, and California within 18 months. They'd develop online training programs to reach workers nationwide. They'd create a legal defense fund for whistleblowers facing retaliation. They'd partner with universities to research workplace safety innovations. It was ambitious, maybe too ambitious, but ambition had built the center in the first place, and ambition would carry it forward. 3 weeks after the announcement, on a Friday afternoon in early December, a moving truck pulled up to the warehouse. Workers began loading equipment, files, furniture. The lease on the warehouse was ending, and they were relocating to a larger facility, a 3-story building in Georgetown with modern classrooms, conference rooms, and space to grow. Sophia watched the movers work, feeling unexpectedly emotional about leaving this space. Yes, it had been cramped and imperfect, but it was where the Phoenix Center had been born, where they'd held their first training session, their first support group, their first moment of believing they could actually make a difference. Second thoughts? Ethan joined her, holding a box of files. Nostalgia. This place represented everything we were fighting for, making something good from the ruins of tragedy. The new building represents that too, just with better heating and functional bathrooms. He smiled. Change is good, Sophia. We can honor what this place meant while building something better. They were interrupted by excited shouting from the loading area. Marcus appeared, grinning wider than Sophia had ever seen. You two need to see this, now. They followed him outside, where a delivery truck had arrived. The driver was unloading large wrapped packages, dozens of them. Marcus handed Ethan an envelope that had come with the delivery. Inside was a letter, handwritten on expensive stationery. Dear Mr. Ward and Ms. Grant, I recently learned about the Phoenix Response Center from news coverage of the Morrison investigation. Your mission resonates deeply with me. My late husband died in a construction accident 15 years ago. Faulty scaffolding, ignored safety warnings, the same story you're fighting to end. I've followed your work with admiration and hope. These packages contain equipment I believe will help your training programs. Use them well. Change the world. Respectfully, Margaret Sullivan. Ethan tore open one of the packages. Inside was a state-of-the-art virtual reality training system, the kind that costs tens of thousands of dollars. He opened another, advanced safety monitoring equipment. Another, pressure sensors, structural analysis tools, emergency response kits. There's more, Marcus said, pointing to an attached invoice. She donated $1.2 million worth of equipment, everything on our wish list and things we didn't even know existed. It's all here. Sophia found herself crying, overwhelmed by the generosity of a stranger who'd suffered loss and chosen to transform it into support for their mission. This was why they fought. This was what made the struggle worthwhile. People like Margaret Sullivan, who'd lost everything but still believed in building something better. We need to thank her, Sophia managed, personally. Not just a form letter, but a real genuine thank you. Already on it, Marcus said. I've got her contact information. We'll arrange a meeting, show her what her donation accomplished. The move to the new building took 3 days. It was chaos, boxes everywhere, furniture in wrong rooms, technology that needed configuring. But slowly, methodically, the space transformed into something remarkable. Bright classrooms with modern equipment. A memorial hall displaying not just the original 14 photographs, but space for others. A growing wall of workers whose deaths had catalyzed change. A children's area for family support programs, decorated with bright colors and hope. On December 15th, they held a soft opening. No media, no big announcements. Just the core team, a few donors, and the 7 Plant 7 families who'd attended the original grand opening. Mrs. Martinez stood before the expanded memorial wall, touching her son Daniel's photograph. "You've grown this place," she said to Ethan and Sophia. "When you first opened, I wasn't sure if it would last, if it was real or just guilt masquerading as purpose. But you've proved it's real. You've built something that will outlive all of us." "Because of Daniel," Sophia said. "Because of all of them. They're the foundation everything else is built on." "I know, and I'm grateful." Mrs. Martinez turned to face them. "I still don't forgive you, Ms. Grant. I'm not sure I ever will. But I respect what you're doing." That's enough. It was more than Sophia had hoped for, more than she deserved. She nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. The evening continued with tours, conversations, quiet reflections. Emma and Leah ran through the new building, claiming favorite rooms, imagining all the good that would happen here. They'd healed remarkably over the past months, still had nightmares occasionally, still attended therapy weekly, but they were children again. Happy, hopeful, believing in tomorrow. As the guests departed and night fell over Georgetown, Ethan and Sophia found themselves alone in the memorial hall. 14 photographs had become 37. They'd added images of workers from other companies who'd died due to negligence, representing the larger fight they'd committed to. "Frederick Morrison's trial starts in 6 weeks, Sophia said quietly. "They want us both to testify." "I know. Agent Chase briefed me yesterday." Ethan studied the photographs. "It'll be brutal. Morrison's lawyers will attack our credibility, our motivations, everything we've built. They'll make it about us instead of about his crimes." "Let them try. We've survived worse." Sophia's voice was steady. "We've been called murderers, frauds, attention seekers. We've had our daughters kidnapped, our reputations destroyed, our mission questioned by everyone. And we're still here, still fighting. Morrison can't take that away from us." "No," Ethan agreed. "He can't." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the memorial photographs in the dim light. 37 faces representing 37 families. 37 reasons to keep fighting even when fighting seemed impossible. "You know what I realized?" Sophia said. "That parking garage, the night you saved my life. That wasn't the beginning of this story. It was the middle. The beginning was when you tried to warn me about Plant 7 and I fired you. Everything since then has been consequences of that moment. And the ending won't be Morrison's trial or this new building or any single event. The ending is the rest of our lives, spent trying to make that moment mean something. That's not an ending. That's just life." Ethan turned to face her. "We don't get neat conclusions or final victories. We just get days, some good, some terrible, most somewhere in between. And we choose how to spend them. Then I choose to spend them fighting, making this center everything it can be, protecting workers, supporting families, holding corporations accountable." She met his eyes. "What do you choose?" "The same, for as long as it takes." A sound from the doorway interrupted them. Vanessa Chen stood there, holding a bottle of champagne and 3 glasses. "Sorry to interrupt the meaningful moment, but I figured we should celebrate. New building, new chapter, all that inspirational stuff." "You brought 3 glasses?" Ethan noticed. "I'm optimistic. Plus, Marcus is parking the car. He'll want in on this." She poured, handed glasses to Ethan and Sophia. "To the Phoenix Response Center. May it rise from the ashes again and again, no matter how many times corrupt assholes try to burn it down." They clinked glasses, drank, and laughed. Marcus joined them moments later, stealing Vanessa's glass and proposing his own toast. Then more staff members arrived. Somehow word had spread about the impromptu celebration, and the memorial hall filled with people who'd chosen to fight alongside them. It wasn't a party. It was quieter than that, more sacred. A gathering of people who'd been broken by tragedy and chose to build instead of collapse. Workers who'd lost colleagues, families who'd lost loved ones, advocates who'd seen too much suffering and refused to accept it as inevitable. They stayed until midnight, telling stories, making plans, dreaming about what the center could become. When they finally left, Sophia was the last one out. She paused at the door, looking back at the memorial wall one final time. "Thank you," she whispered to the 37 photographs. "For giving my life meaning. I'll try to be worthy of that." Then she turned off the lights and stepped into the December night where snow was beginning to fall. The first snow of winter, covering Seattle in white, making everything look clean and new and possible. Across town, in a federal detention center, Frederick Morrison lay in his cell and plotted. He'd lost battles, but the war wasn't over. He had resources, connections, people who owed him favors. The Phoenix Response Center thought they'd won. They'd learned differently. But Morrison didn't know something crucial. Didn't understand what Ethan and Sophia had discovered through fire and loss and fighting back from destruction. They'd learned that victory wasn't about defeating enemies. It was about building something good enough, strong enough, meaningful enough that it survived even when you didn't. The Phoenix Response Center would outlast Frederick Morrison, would outlast Ethan and Sophia, would outlast everyone who'd built it, because it wasn't built on revenge or guilt or even redemption. It was built on the simple, radical belief that every worker deserved to come home safe. Every family deserved protection. Every death from negligence was one death too many. That belief was fireproof, bulletproof, Morrison-proof. And it was just getting started. 3 weeks later, on January the 3rd, the Phoenix Response Center held its first training session in the new building. 52 construction workers from 6 different companies attended. Ethan taught them to recognize structural risks. Sophia explained how to report safety concerns without retaliation. Vanessa spoke about supporting families if the worst happened. At the end of the day, one of the workers, a young man maybe 25 with calloused hands and tired eyes, approached Ethan. "My cousin died at Plant 7, he said. "David Martinez. He was Mrs. Martinez's nephew. Family never talks about it much. Too painful. But I wanted you to know that because of David, because of this place, I'm going home safe tonight, and tomorrow, and every day after. So thank you. From all of us who get to keep living because you wouldn't give up." Ethan shook his hand, blinking back tears. "Thank you for being here, for learning, for caring enough to make yourself safer. It's not just about me. I got a wife, a baby girl who's 3 months old. She deserves a dad who comes home." The young man smiled. "That's what this is really about, right? Not safety regulations or corporate accountability, just fathers coming home to their daughters." "Yeah," Ethan whispered, thinking of Leah. "That's exactly what it's about." The worker left, and Sophia joined Ethan by the window. Outside, Seattle sprawled under winter clouds, gray and cold, but alive with possibility. "We're going to make it," she said. Not a question, a statement of fact. "We are," Ethan agreed. "Not because we're special or heroic or anything dramatic. Just because we keep showing up, keep fighting, keep choosing right over easy, even when right is impossibly hard. Your Navy SEAL saying, the only easy day was yesterday. Every day harder than the last. Every day a choice to keep going." He turned to her. "Think we'll still be doing this in 10 years? I think we'll be doing this until we die, or until every workplace in America is actually safe, whichever comes first. So definitely until we die." They laughed, exhausted and exhilarated in equal measure. Outside, the first trainees were heading to their cars, to their homes, to their families. They'd learned skills today that might save their lives tomorrow. That had to be enough. That was everything. Ethan thought about Frederick Morrison in his cell, probably still scheming, still believing he could destroy what they'd built. Let him try. The Phoenix Center wasn't just a building or an organization anymore. It was an idea, and ideas, once planted, were impossible to kill. Sophia thought about the 14 workers on the memorial wall, about the 23 others who'd joined them, about all the future workers who'd never appear there because of the work being done today. That was her legacy now. Not the billions she'd made, not the company she'd built, but the lives she'd saved by admitting she'd failed to save others. It was a strange kind of redemption. Incomplete, imperfect, ongoing. But it was real. And real was enough. "Come on," Ethan said, collecting his jacket. "Leah and Emma are making dinner tonight. Some kind of pasta experiment. We're invited." "Both of us?" "Both of us. The girls insist. Something about family dinner." Sophia smiled, genuine and warm. "Then we'd better not disappoint them." They left together, 2 people bound by tragedy and choice, and the daily work of building something that mattered. The Phoenix Response Center locked up behind them, safe and solid, waiting for tomorrow's battles. And in the memorial hall, 37 faces watched over empty rooms, their deaths transformed into purpose, their loss into meaning, their memory into a promise that would outlive everyone who'd known them. The Phoenix had risen from the ashes. Now it just had to keep flying. The pasta experiment turned out to be catastrophic in the best possible way. Emma and Leah had attempted some kind of carbonara Alfredo fusion that resulted in a pot of what could only be described as cheese soup with occasional pasta sightings. They served it with such pride that neither Ethan nor Sophia had the heart to suggest ordering pizza instead. "This is delicious," Sophia lied, forcing down another bite while Emma beamed. "It's really not," Leah said with the brutal honesty of a 10-year-old. "But we tried hard, so you have to eat it anyway." They sat around the small dining table in Ethan's apartment, the same cramped space he'd lived in for 2 years, though now it felt less like a prison and more like a home. Photographs covered the refrigerator, Leah's school artwork, Emma's soccer team, a picture of all 4 of them at the center's opening. A family, unconventional and unexpected, built from ruins. "Dad got a letter today," Leah announced between bites of cheese soup. "From the president." Ethan shot his daughter a look. "Leah, we talked about this." "About what?" Sophia set down her fork. "Ethan, what letter?" He sighed, realizing he couldn't avoid this conversation. "The White House contacted me last week. They're holding a ceremony honoring whistleblowers and workplace safety advocates. They want me to attend, speak, probably. It's not a big deal." "It's a huge deal." Emma bounced in her seat. "Mom, they want Mr. Ward to meet the president. That's amazing." "When?" Sophia asked quietly. 3 weeks. February 14th. Valentine's Day, ironically. Ethan pushed food around his plate. "I haven't decided if I'm going." "Why wouldn't you go?" "Because it feels like taking credit for something that shouldn't be celebrated." 14 people died, Sophia. "More than that. 37 that we know of. Probably hundreds we don't. Going to the White House, shaking hands, accepting praise for exposing corruption feels like profiting from tragedy. It's not profiting. It's recognition that speaking up mattered, that your refusal to stay silent saved lives." Sophia reached across the table, touched his hand. "Jenny would want you to go. She'd want Leah to see her father honored for doing the right thing." At the mention of his late wife, Ethan's throat tightened. "I don't know what Jenny would want. She's been gone so long that sometimes I can barely remember her voice." "I remember," Leah said softly. "Mom's voice. She used to sing when she cooked, off-key, really badly, and she'd laugh when I told her she sounded like a broken bird." Tears welled in the girl's eyes. "She'd want you to go, Dad. She'd want you to stand up there and show everyone that telling the truth matters, even when it costs everything." The room fell silent except for the sound of Leah crying. Emma reached over and held her hand, these 2 girls who'd bonded through trauma and therapy and learning that families came in unexpected forms. "Okay," Ethan whispered. "I'll go. We'll go. All of us. If I'm accepting recognition for this work, then everyone who built it should be there." "The White House isn't going to accommodate 4 random people," Sophia started. "You're not random. You're my partner in this mission. And our daughters. They survived kidnapping because we refused to back down. They're part of this story." Ethan's voice was firm. "We go together, or I don't go at all." Sophia's eyes filled with tears. "You really mean that?" "Every word." 2 weeks later, Agent Victoria Chase called with news that would reshape everything they thought they knew about the case. "Frederick Morrison is dead." Ethan nearly dropped his phone. "What? How?" "Heart attack. In his cell. Around 3 a.m. this morning. Prison medical staff tried to revive him but couldn't. He was pronounced dead at 3:47 a.m. Chase's voice was carefully neutral. "The timing is suspicious. He was scheduled to testify today about his network's connections to federal officials, but preliminary autopsy suggests natural causes. He was 72, overweight, high stress, hearts fail. Or someone made his heart fail." Sophia had been listening on speakerphone, her expression grim. How convenient that he dies right before he could implicate more powerful people. "That thought has occurred to us. We're conducting a thorough investigation, but even if it was murder disguised as natural causes, Morrison's associates are smart enough to leave no evidence. We may never know the truth. What happens to the trial? Ethan asked. The other defendants, the charges. The case against Morrison is obviously dismissed, but we have enough evidence to prosecute the 53 people Teresa Morrison's files exposed. Those trials will proceed. Justice will still happen, just without Morrison there to see it. Chase paused. I know this isn't the closure you wanted, watching him face consequences, seeing him held accountable, but he's gone. He can't hurt anyone else. After Chase hung up, Ethan and Sophia sat in the center's office, processing the news. Part of Ethan felt cheated. Morrison had escaped earthly justice, would never sit in a cell for decades contemplating his crimes. But another part felt a strange relief. The man who'd ordered his daughter's kidnapping was gone, dead, unable to scheme or threaten or destroy. I don't know how to feel, Sophia admitted. I wanted him in prison, wanted him to suffer the way his victims suffered, but now that he's dead, I just feel empty. Because revenge doesn't heal anything, it just creates the illusion of closure. Ethan stood, walked to the window overlooking the Georgetown neighborhood. Morrison's death doesn't bring back the 37 workers on our memorial wall, doesn't erase the years I spent destroyed, doesn't undo any of it. So what does it change? Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. We spent so much energy fighting him that now that he's gone, we have to figure out who we are without that enemy defining us. We're people building a center that protects workers. That hasn't changed. No, Sophia agreed. But the shadows lifted. We're not fighting Morrison's sabotage anymore. We're just doing the work. That's simpler, cleaner, maybe harder in its own way. The news of Morrison's death hit media within hours. Cable news ran retrospectives on his corruption network, his crimes, the Phoenix Center's role in exposing him. Some commentators suggested his death was suspicious. Others said it was karma. A few called it tragic. A powerful man brought low by his own greed. The center received hundreds of messages, some supportive, some accusatory, many just confused about what Morrison's death meant for workplace safety reform. Ethan and Sophia released a joint statement. Frederick Morrison's death doesn't change our mission. The corruption he represented still exists. The systems that allowed 37 workers to die preventable deaths still need reform. We'll continue fighting for workplace safety, supporting affected families, and holding corporations accountable. Morrison may be gone, but the work remains. The White House ceremony became more significant in light of Morrison's death. What had been scheduled as a routine recognition became a national conversation about whistleblower protection, corporate accountability, and the price of speaking truth to power. On February 14th, Ethan, Sophia, Emma, and Leah flew to Washington, D.C. The flight was surreal. Ethan had never been to the nation's capital, had barely traveled since Jenny's death. Now he was going to meet the president, bringing his daughter and his former enemy-turned-partner, representing a movement that had transformed his personal tragedy into systemic change. They stayed at a modest hotel near the National Mall. That evening, they walked past monuments and museums, 4 people who'd been strangers 3 years ago, now bound together by circumstances that still seemed impossible. "Mom," Emma said, holding Sophia's hand, "are you nervous about tomorrow?" "Terrified. I'm going to the White House as someone who was complicit in the corruption we exposed. Some people think I don't deserve to be there." "But you changed. You made things right." Emma looked up at her mother with fierce loyalty. "That's what heroes do, right? They make mistakes and then fix them." "I don't think I'm a hero, baby. You are to me. You could have stayed rich and safe and pretended nothing was wrong, but you chose to lose everything to tell the truth. That's brave." Sophia pulled her daughter close, crying openly on the National Mall while tourists passed and monuments watched. Ethan gave them space, walking ahead with Leah, giving Sophia and Emma their moment. "Do you think your mom would be proud of me?" Leah asked suddenly, "for being brave when we got kidnapped?" Ethan knelt down, eye level with his daughter. "Your mom would be so proud of you every single day, for your courage, your kindness, your ability to find joy even after everything we've been through. You're exactly the person she hoped you'd become." "I miss her." "I know, I do too, every day." He brushed hair from Leah's face. But she's with us, in the choices we make, the way we treat people, the work we do to make the world safer. That's how she stays alive, through us living the values she taught us. Like how the workers on the memorial wall stay alive through the center? Exactly like that. The next morning, they dressed carefully for the White House ceremony. Ethan wore the same suit he'd worn for the center's grand opening, Jenny's wedding ring on a chain around his neck where it always lived. Sophia wore a simple blue dress with the pin bearing 14 names. She never appeared publicly without it. Emma and Leah wore matching outfits they'd picked together, presenting a united front. The White House was smaller than Ethan expected, but more intimidating. Security was extensive, the architecture overwhelming, the weight of history pressing down on everything. They were escorted through corridors lined with portraits of former presidents, into the East Room where the ceremony would be held. 23 other honorees were there. Whistleblowers who'd exposed corporate fraud, environmental destruction, financial crimes. People who'd sacrificed careers, reputations, sometimes safety to reveal truth. Ethan found himself among his tribe, people who understood what it cost to choose right over easy. "Mr. Ward?" A woman in her 50s approached, extending her hand. "I'm Dr. Sarah Chen. I exposed pharmaceutical fraud that would have killed thousands of patients. Lost my medical license for 2 years before being vindicated. I just wanted to say your work with the Phoenix Center inspired me to keep fighting even when I wanted to give up." They talked for 15 minutes, trading stories of legal battles and death threats, and the strange isolation of being vindicated but still not truly trusted. Other honorees joined the conversation, creating an impromptu support group for people society simultaneously celebrated and suspected. When the president entered, everyone stood. He was younger than Ethan expected, with tired eyes that suggested the weight of office was heavier than cameras showed. He worked the room, greeting each honoree personally, listening to their stories. When he reached Ethan, the president's handshake was firm. "Mr. Ward, I've been following the Phoenix Center's work. What you and Ms. Grant have built from such tragedy, it's remarkable." "Thank you, Mr. President, though Ms. Grant deserves most of the credit. I just teach safety protocols. She transformed a mission into a movement." The president turned to Sophia. "Ms. Grant, your confession took courage. Holding yourself accountable when you could have hidden behind lawyers and corporate structures, that set a new standard for executive responsibility." "I didn't deserve praise, Mr. President. I caused those deaths. I'm just trying to prevent more." That's leadership, not the easy kind that takes credit for success, but the hard kind that accepts responsibility for failure and works to ensure it never happens again. He gestured to Emma and Leah. "These your daughters?" "Yes, sir," Ethan and Sophia said simultaneously, then glanced at each other, surprised by the joint claim. The president smiled. "They look like they're lucky to have you both." The ceremony began. One by one, honorees were recognized, their stories told, their sacrifices acknowledged. When Ethan's name was called, he walked to the podium with Sophia beside him. They'd agreed to accept recognition together since the work was joint. The citation read, "For extraordinary courage in exposing workplace safety violations and corporate corruption at great personal cost, and for creating the Phoenix Response Center, which has trained over 2,000 workers, supported 97 families, and contributed to the prosecution of 53 individuals involved in systemic corruption. Their work has saved countless lives and set new standards for corporate accountability." Ethan accepted the medal, heavy and official, feeling like an imposter. He tried to save 14 workers and failed. Everything since was just trying to live with that failure. But then he looked at the audience, at Leah and Emma in the front row, at the other whistleblowers who'd sacrificed everything, at people who'd flown in from Seattle to attend, including Vanessa Chen and Marcus and several Plant 7 families. And he understood. This wasn't about him. It was about the movement. The collective decision to demand better, to refuse to accept preventable deaths as the cost of doing business. "Thank you, Mr. President," Ethan said into the microphone. His voice echoed through the East Room. "But I need to be clear about something. I'm not a hero. I tried to save 14 men and failed. They died because I wasn't persuasive enough, wasn't loud enough, didn't fight hard enough. This medal represents my failure as much as any success that came after. uncomfortable shifting in the audience. This wasn't the script. Honorees were supposed to accept graciously and sit down. But failure taught me something success never could. It taught me that individual heroism isn't enough. Systems protect corruption, and only collective action breaks those systems. The Phoenix Center exists because one woman, he gestured to Sophia, chose accountability over self-protection. Because families of victims demanded justice instead of accepting settlement money in silence. Because workers refused to accept that their lives mattered less than corporate profits. Because FBI agents like Victoria Chase prioritized truth over political convenience. I'm just one piece of something much larger. He held up the medal. So I accept this on behalf of the 37 workers whose photographs hang in our memorial hall. On behalf of Teresa Morrison, who destroyed her own life to expose her husband's crimes. On behalf of every whistleblower who's been called a troublemaker for refusing to stay silent. This isn't my medal. It's theirs. I'm just holding it for them. The room erupted in applause. Ethan returned to his seat, hands shaking, feeling like he'd either said something profound or made a complete fool of himself. Sophia squeezed his hand. That was perfect, she whispered. After the ceremony, there was a reception. Ethan found himself surrounded by people wanting to talk, to share their stories, to ask about the center's work. It was overwhelming in the best way. Evidence that what they'd built mattered beyond Seattle, beyond their immediate circle. Agent Chase appeared through the crowd, looking official in her FBI suit. Mr. Ward, Ms. Grant, I have news. We've arrested 3 more individuals connected to Morrison's network, including the corrupt guard we suspected of helping orchestrate his death. Turns out Morrison's heart attack was induced by contaminated medication. Someone murdered him to prevent testimony. Will you prosecute? Sophia asked. We're building the case now. It's complicated. Proving murder when the method leaves minimal evidence takes time, but justice will happen. Chase smiled grimly. Morrison thought he could escape accountability through death. He was wrong. That evening, after returning to their hotel, Ethan found Sophia on the balcony overlooking DC's lights. She was crying quietly, clutching the medal she'd received. Hey, he said gently. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Everything's right. That's why I'm crying. She wiped her eyes. 3 years ago, I was a billionaire CEO who thought profit margins mattered more than people. I fired you for trying to save lives. I let corruption flourish under my watch. I caused 14 deaths through negligence and arrogance. Sophia, let me finish. Today, the President of the United States honored us for building something that saves lives. Families who should hate me thanked me for creating the center. Workers who'd lost colleagues told me the training we provided kept them safe. And I realized I'll never undo what I did. Those 14 men are still dead. But maybe, possibly, I've created enough good to balance even a fraction of that evil. You have. You've created more than enough good. Have I? She turned to face him. Or am I just a monster who got lucky enough to find redemption? You're a person who made terrible choices and then spent years making better ones. That's not luck. That's transformation. Ethan moved to stand beside her. I hated you for 2 years, Sophia. Genuinely hated you with everything I had. You destroyed my career, my reputation, my ability to provide for my daughter. You let me take the blame for deaths I tried to prevent. I'll never forget that. I know. But I also won't forget that you could have stayed quiet, could have hidden behind corporate protections and legal teams, could have let Morrison silence us permanently. Instead, you confessed everything, risked prison, liquidated your fortune, and spent 3 years building something that actually matters. That took courage I'm not sure I would have had in your position. So you forgive me? Ethan was quiet for a long moment, considering the question honestly. I don't know if I forgive you. Forgiveness feels too simple for something this complicated. But I trust you. I respect you. And I'm grateful every day that you chose to be the person who builds the Phoenix Center instead of the person who destroyed Plant 7. Is that enough? It's more than I deserve. Sophia looked out at the city lights. Thank you, Ethan, for saving my life in that parking garage, for giving me a chance to be better, for building this alongside me instead of destroying me the way you had every right to do. Thank you for listening. Eventually, even though it took 14 deaths and 2 years of hell to make you hear what I was saying. They stood in silence, two broken people who'd somehow built something beautiful from their brokenness. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. It was messier than that, more complicated, but it was real. The next morning, they visited the memorials before flying home. Lincoln, Jefferson, Martin Luther King Jr., people who'd fought for justice, paid terrible prices, changed the world through courage and conviction. Emma and Leah ran ahead, reading inscriptions, asking questions about history. "You think we'll be remembered?" Sophia asked, watching their daughters. "No, and that's fine. The work gets remembered, the lives saved, the systems changed. We're just temporary stewards of something bigger than ourselves." Ethan smiled. "Besides, I don't need history to remember me. I just need Leah to grow up in a world where speaking truth doesn't destroy you. That's legacy enough." They flew home that afternoon. Seattle welcomed them with characteristic rain and gray skies. The Phoenix Center looked smaller after the grandeur of Washington, D.C., but more important, this was where the real work happened. Not ceremonies or medals, but daily training sessions and support groups and workers learning to protect themselves. The following weeks brought unexpected changes. Morrison's death and the White House ceremony triggered a surge of interest in workplace safety reform. 3 governors contacted the center about creating state-level programs modeled on their work. The Department of Labor asked them to consult on new federal regulations. Universities wanted to study their training methods. "We're becoming legitimate," Marcus observed at a staff meeting. "Not scrappy underdogs fighting corruption, but established experts that government agencies consult." "That's weird." "It's evolution," Vanessa countered. "We started as a crisis response to immediate tragedy. Now we're building sustainable infrastructure. That's how movements become institutions." "Is that good?" Leah's question caught everyone off guard. She'd been sitting quietly in the corner doing homework while the adults met. "Becoming an institution, I mean. Don't institutions become the thing they were fighting against?" Out of the mouths of children. The room fell silent, confronting an uncomfortable truth. They'd built the Phoenix Center to challenge institutional corruption. What happened when they became the institution? "That's why we have to stay vigilant," Sophia said. "Keep questioning ourselves. Keep listening to critics. Keep the memorial wall visible so we never forget why we exist. The moment we prioritize organizational growth over mission, we've failed." "How do we prevent that?" Ethan asked. "Because history shows that most reform movements eventually become part of the system they were trying to change." The discussion continued for hours. They debated governance structures, accountability measures, ways to preserve their insurgent spirit while scaling their impact. No easy answers emerged, but the willingness to ask hard questions felt important. That evening, Ethan received an unexpected call. A number he didn't recognize, but something made him answer. "Mr. Ward, this is Father Michael Chen. I'm a Catholic priest here in Seattle, and I'm calling about a rather unusual situation." The voice was gentle, educated. "A woman came to confession last week. She's dying, terminal cancer, weeks left, and she wanted me to contact you on her behalf." "Who is she?" "Her name is Patricia Reynolds, Charles Reynolds' mother." Ethan's blood ran cold. Charles Reynolds, the vice president who'd orchestrated the Plant 7 cover-up, was serving 35 years in federal prison. His mother was the last person Ethan expected to hear from. What does she want? To apologize. To tell you the truth about her son. She says there are things you don't know, things that might help you understand how the corruption became so systemic. Father Chen paused. "She's at Providence Hospital, room 437. She asked if you'd visit before she dies. No pressure, I understand if you refuse, but I promise to relay the message." Ethan hung up, mind reeling. Sophia noticed his expression immediately. "What's wrong?" He told her about the call. Her face cycled through shock, anger, and something like curiosity. "Are you going?" she asked. "I don't know. Part of me wants to hear what she has to say. Part of me thinks it's a trap or a manipulation. Part of me just doesn't care. Reynolds is in prison, his mother is dying. None of it brings back the people who died." "But you're curious." "Yeah, I am." Ethan met her eyes. "Come with me?" They visited Providence Hospital the next afternoon. Room 437 was in the oncology wing, where the air smelled of antiseptic and approaching death. Patricia Reynolds looked exactly like her son. Same sharp features, same calculating eyes, but cancer had hollowed her out, leaving only essential bones and relentless will. "Mr. Ward, Ms. Grant?" Her voice was a whisper. "Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would." "We almost didn't," Sophia said honestly. "Your son destroyed lives. Why should we care what you have to say?" "Because I helped make him the person who did those things. And I need to confess before I meet God." Patricia gestured weakly to chairs beside her bed. "Please, sit. This won't take long. I don't have long." They sat, wary but listening. Patricia's story came in fragments, interrupted by coughing and pain. She'd raised Charles alone after her husband died, pushed him to succeed, to accumulate power, to never show weakness, taught him that people were resources to be managed, that morality was for those who couldn't afford pragmatism. When he started cutting corners at Grant Tech, taking bribes, falsifying reports, she encouraged it, praised his initiative, told him that real success meant doing whatever was necessary. "I made him a monster," Patricia whispered. "And when Plant 7 exploded, when 14 men died, he came to me crying, asking if he'd done the right thing, and I—" Her voice broke. "I told him yes. Told him to protect himself, to cover it up, to sacrifice Mr. Ward if necessary. I'm the reason he framed you. I'm the reason those families suffered without justice. All of it traces back to me." "Why are you telling us this?" Ethan's voice was flat. "Because I'm dying, and I'm terrified of judgment. Because maybe if I confess to you, if I give you the truth, God will show me mercy I don't deserve." She pulled out an envelope from beneath her blanket. "These are letters Charles wrote me from prison, confessing everything. More corruption, more victims, details that never came out in trials. Give them to the FBI. Let them finish what you started." Sophia took the envelope carefully. "This doesn't absolve you." "I know, nothing absolves me, but maybe it helps someone. Maybe it prevents one more family from suffering." Patricia's breathing was labored now. "I'm so sorry. For my son's crimes, for my role in creating him, for every life destroyed by the values I taught. I'm sorry." She died 3 days later. The letters she'd given them contained exactly what she'd promised: evidence of additional corruption, more names, more crimes. The FBI used them to bring charges against 7 more individuals. Justice, expanding in circles like ripples in water. But Ethan couldn't stop thinking about Patricia's confession, about how corruption wasn't born in boardrooms but in homes, in the values parents taught children, in the culture that celebrated profit over people. Fighting corruption meant changing not just laws, but hearts. He shared this thought with Sophia over coffee one Saturday morning at the center. They'd started a ritual, weekend coffee, while their daughters were at various activities, time to decompress and plan. "So we're supposed to change hearts now? Isn't workplace safety complex enough without adding moral transformation to the mission?" Sophia was only half joking. "I'm not saying we add it to the mission. I'm saying we acknowledge that regulatory reform only goes so far. Real change requires cultural shift, teaching people that workers aren't resources to be exploited but humans who deserve dignity and safety. That's generational work. We won't live to see result." "No, but Leah and Emma will, and their children." Ethan gestured around the center at the memorial wall visible through his office window. "We're planting seeds. Maybe they grow into forests we'll never walk through. That's fine. Planting still matters." Their conversation was interrupted by excited shouting from the training floor. They rushed out to find Marcus and Vanessa surrounded by staff, everyone talking over each other, pointing at a laptop screen. "What's happening?" Sophia asked. Marcus turned the screen toward them. "Congress just passed the Workplace Safety Reform Act. Mandatory third-party inspections, protection for whistleblowers, criminal liability for executives who ignore safety warnings, and federal funding for training programs modeled on our center." Ethan read the screen, hardly believing it. They'd been advocating for this legislation for 18 months, testified 3 times, mobilized workers across the country to contact representatives. But he'd never truly believed it would pass. Too many corporate interests opposed it, too many politicians in industry pockets. It passed the Senate 67-33 Vanessa said, tears streaming. Bipartisan support. The president says he'll sign it next week. This is everything we've been fighting for. The room erupted in celebration. Staff hugged, cried, laughed. Someone opened champagne left over from the building opening. Emma and Leah appeared from the children's area, sensing something important was happening, and got swept up in the joy without fully understanding it. In the chaos, Ethan and Sophia found themselves standing together by the memorial wall, watching their team celebrate. "We did it," Sophia whispered. "We actually did it." They did it. Ethan gestured to the 37 photographs. Every single person on this wall. They're the ones who paid the price that made this possible. Then we better make sure their sacrifice meant something. The Workplace Safety Reform Act signing ceremony happened on March 23rd, exactly 3 years and 2 days after the Plant 7 explosion. The president invited Ethan, Sophia, and representatives from families of workplace accident victims across the country. The Phoenix Center's memorial photographs were displayed prominently, reminding everyone why the legislation mattered. When the president signed the bill into law, using multiple pens that he distributed to those present, Ethan received one engraved with, "For Ethan Ward, who refused to stay silent." Sophia's read, "For Sophia Grant, who chose accountability." The pens sat on their desks at the center, daily reminders that speaking truth to power eventually worked. Maybe not quickly, maybe not easily, but eventually. Life settled into something resembling normalcy over the following months. The center continued expanding, 12 locations across 5 states by summer, with plans for 20 more. They trained over 15,000 workers in their first full year of operation. Vanessa's family support program served 230 families. The FBI's investigation, bolstered by Patricia Reynolds' letters, resulted in 93 total arrests and systemic reforms in construction, manufacturing, and energy industries. Frederick Morrison's posthumous prosecution for corruption, conspiracy, and orchestrating the kidnapping resulted in asset forfeiture. His entire $400 million estate was seized and distributed to victims' families and workplace safety programs. The Phoenix Center received $50 million from the settlement, more than they'd ever dreamed possible. But the most significant change was personal. Ethan and Sophia, who'd started as bitter enemies forced into uneasy alliance, had become genuine partners. They finished each other's sentences in meetings, developed inside jokes about catastrophic pasta dinners, made decisions through some kind of telepathic consensus that their staff found both impressive and mildly irritating. "You two are basically married," Marcus observed one day, not entirely joking. "We're colleagues," Sophia corrected. "Business partners. Who have dinner together 3 nights a week, whose daughters are inseparable, who coordinate outfits without planning, and who look at each other like..." He gestured vaguely. "You know what? Never mind. Totally just colleagues." The observation lodged in Ethan's brain, uncomfortable and impossible to ignore. He and Sophia weren't romantically involved. Their relationship was professional, their bond forged through shared trauma and mission. But somewhere along the way, she'd become his closest confidant, the person he called first with good news or bad, the one whose opinion mattered most. He didn't know what to do with that realization. The situation came to a head on a humid evening in July. The center was hosting its first annual memorial service, a ceremony honoring the 37 workers on their wall and all others who died in preventable workplace accidents. 200 people attended, filling the building with grief and remembrance and determination that these deaths would catalyze change. Mrs. Martinez spoke about her son Daniel. Thomas Reeves's brother told stories about a man who loved electrical work and bad jokes. Vanessa remembered her husband Michael, voice breaking but steady. One by one, families honored the dead by celebrating the lives they'd lived. Ethan gave the closing remarks, standing before the memorial wall with 37 faces watching. "We gather tonight not to mourn, though we do mourn, but to remember and recommit. These 37 people, and thousands like them across our nation, died because someone prioritized profit over safety, efficiency over caution, quarterly earnings over human life. Their deaths should have been prevented. Their families should never have suffered this loss, and the only way to honor them is to ensure no one else dies the same way." He paused, looking at the photographs. "But here's what I've learned over 3 years of running this center. Preventing deaths isn't enough. We also have to affirm life. Celebrate the workers who go home safe because of training we provided. Support the families who are healing instead of grieving. Build communities that protect each other. That's how we turn tragedy into triumph, not by erasing the past, but by creating a better future. As people filed out after the ceremony, many stopped to thank Ethan and Sophia. Some shared stories of lives saved by the center's work. Others just needed to talk, to be heard, to know their grief was witnessed. After everyone left, Ethan and Sophia stayed to clean up. Another ritual, working together in comfortable silence while the building settled around them. They'd just finished stacking chairs when Sophia said, seemingly out of nowhere, "I think I'm falling in love with you." Ethan dropped the chair he was holding. It clattered loudly on the floor, echoing through the empty building. "What?" "I know it's complicated. I know our history is terrible. I know I destroyed your life, and we built this partnership on the ruins of that destruction. But somewhere along the way, working beside you, watching you choose integrity over anger, seeing you be an incredible father to Leah, I fell in love." Sophia's voice was steady despite her obvious terror. "And I needed to tell you because keeping it secret felt dishonest. We built this center on truth, even uncomfortable truth. So there it is, the uncomfortable truth." Ethan stared at her, mind completely blank. In 3 years, he'd never considered the possibility of romantic feelings between them. Their bond was professional, platonic, built on shared mission rather than mutual attraction. Except, was it? Or had he been deliberately not noticing the way his heart lifted when she walked into a room, the way her smile made difficult days bearable, the way he'd started measuring his life in moments shared with her? "I don't know what to say," he managed. "You don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know. We can keep working together exactly as we have been. Nothing needs to change. I can—" Her voice finally cracked. "I can keep this to myself. I'm good at hiding things I shouldn't feel." "Sophia." Ethan moved closer, not sure what he was doing, but unable to stay distant. I haven't thought about relationships since Jenny died. Haven't even considered the possibility. She was my whole heart, and when she died, that part of me died too. Or I thought it did. I understand, I'm not asking for, but maybe it didn't die. Maybe it just went dormant, waiting for someone who could understand what I'd been through. Someone who'd lived in the same darkness, who'd rebuilt themselves from the same ruins. He reached out, took her hand. "I don't know if what I feel is love. I don't even know if I remember what love feels like, but I know that you matter to me in ways I can't fully articulate. And maybe that's enough to start." Sophia's eyes filled with tears. "You're sure? Because our history is exactly why this might work. We've seen each other at our worst. We've fought through trauma and corruption and nearly dying. There are no illusions left between us, no pedestals to fall from. We know exactly who we are, broken people trying to build something good. If we can do that professionally, maybe we can do it personally too." This is insane. The former CEO and the whistleblower she destroyed, falling in love while running a workplace safety center, nobody will believe it. Nobody believed we'd build this center. Nobody believed we'd take down Morrison's network. Nobody believed we'd pass federal reform legislation. We've made impossible things happen before. Ethan smiled, surprised by how natural it felt. What's one more impossibility? They stood there, hands clasped, in the building they'd created from grief and determination. Around them, 37 photographs watched, silent witnesses to everything that had brought them to this moment. "So what do we do now?" Sophia asked. "Start slow. Figure out what this looks like. Tell our daughters, because they'll probably just say, 'finally,' and roll their eyes." He laughed. "Mostly we keep doing what we've been doing, running the center, fighting for workers, building something that matters. Just maybe we do it as partners in every sense of the word." "That sounds perfect." They kissed, tentative and careful, testing this new dimension of their relationship. It felt right in ways Ethan hadn't expected. Not explosive or dramatic, just comfortable and true, like coming home after a long journey. The months that followed brought adjustments. Ethan and Sophia dated like awkward teenagers, navigating how to be romantic partners while remaining professional colleagues. Their daughters reacted exactly as predicted. Leah said, "About time," while Emma launched into wedding planning despite being told they weren't anywhere near that stage. The staff handled it with surprising grace. Marcus made jokes about conjugal visits to the office. Vanessa offered relationship counseling services. Most people just seemed relieved that their leaders had found happiness after so much pain. On a crisp October evening, 6 months after Sophia's confession, Ethan took her to the overlook above Seattle. The city sprawled beneath them, lights twinkling in the gathering dark. He'd brought Jenny here once, years ago, to propose. Coming back felt like honoring her memory while claiming his future. "I've been thinking about legacy," he said, holding Sophia's hand, "about what we leave behind when we're gone. The center will outlive us. That's good. That's important. But I want our legacy to be more than an organization. I want it to be proof that broken people can heal, that enemies can become allies, that love can grow in the ruins of tragedy." "That's a beautiful legacy." Sophia leaned against him. "Think we can achieve it?" "We're already halfway there." He pulled out a small box from his jacket pocket. Inside was a simple silver ring, engraved with words they'd made their motto. "People before profits, always." "Sophia Grant, you destroyed my life and then helped me rebuild it into something better than before. You're the most infuriating, brilliant, courageous person I've ever met, and I want to spend the rest of my life building impossible things with you. Will you marry me?" She was crying, ugly, messy crying that made her mascara run. "Yes. God, yes. Even though this is insane and everyone will judge us, and we're going to have to explain our origin story at parties for the rest of our lives. Yes." He slipped the ring on her finger, and they kissed overlooking the city where their story had begun in a parking garage with violence and blood. How far they'd come. How much they'd survived. They married 6 months later in a small ceremony at the Phoenix Center, surrounded by the memorial wall and everyone who'd helped build their impossible dream. Mrs. Martinez attended, still not forgiving Sophia but respecting what she'd become. Vanessa served as maid of honor. Marcus was best man. Emma and Leah were junior bridesmaids who spent the entire ceremony grinning. Agent Victoria Chase gave a toast. "To the most unlikely couple I've ever had the privilege of investigating. You've shown that redemption is real, that change is possible, and that love can flourish even in the hardest soil. May your marriage be as resilient as your center, as honest as your confessions, and as enduring as your commitment to protecting workers." Years passed. The Phoenix Response Center grew to 47 locations nationwide, training over 300,000 workers annually. Federal workplace fatalities dropped by 37% in industries where their programs were implemented. The memorial wall expanded to include 216 workers, not because more died, but because families requested their loved ones be honored there, making the center a national monument to workplace safety. Ethan and Sophia testified before Congress 4 more times, advocating for stronger regulations and better enforcement. They wrote a book together, Rising from Ashes: How Tragedy Sparked a Movement, that became required reading in business schools and ethics courses. Universities created endowed chairs in workplace safety named after Plant 7's victims. Emma and Leah grew up, went to college, returned to work at the center in various capacities. Emma became a lawyer specializing in whistleblower protection. Leah became a mechanical engineer who designed safer industrial equipment. Both credited their parents, all 4 of them, because that's how they described the blended family, with teaching them that systems could change if enough people demanded it. On the 10th anniversary of Plant 7's explosion, the center held a memorial service unlike any before. 2,000 people attended, workers who'd been trained, families who'd been supported, legislators who'd passed reforms, companies that had transformed their safety cultures. The event was broadcast nationally, becoming a moment of collective reflection on how far workplace safety had come and how far it still needed to go. Ethan, now 52 with gray threading through his hair and permanent lines around his eyes, gave the keynote address. 10 years ago, 14 men died in an explosion that should never have happened. Their deaths were preventable, foreseeable, the result of corruption and negligence. I tried to stop it. I failed. And for 2 years I carried that failure like a stone in my chest, drowning in guilt and rage and grief. He paused, looking at Sophia beside him, at their daughters in the front row, at the memorial wall now displaying hundreds of faces. But failure taught me something success never could. That individual heroism isn't enough. One person speaking up can be silenced. One whistleblower can be destroyed. One tragedy can be covered up. Real change requires collective action, workers supporting workers, families demanding accountability, citizens refusing to accept that profit matters more than people. His voice grew stronger. The Phoenix Response Center isn't my legacy. It's not Sophia's legacy. It belongs to every person who's ever said, "This isn't safe," and insisted on being heard. To every family who transformed grief into activism. To every worker who refused to accept danger as the price of employment. We're just stewards of a movement that's bigger than any individual. He gestured to the memorial wall. These faces, 216 workers, but representing thousands more whose names we'll never know, they're why we fight. Not because we can bring them back, but because we can prevent others from joining them. That's the promise we make every day. Your life matters, your safety matters. You matter more than profits or productivity or corporate convenience. The crowd stood, applauding for nearly 5 minutes. But Ethan wasn't finished. 10 years ago, Sophia Grant made the worst decision of her professional life. She ignored warnings, prioritized profit, and caused deaths through negligence. She spent the last decade atoning for that decision, confessing publicly, accepting accountability, building systems to prevent others from making similar mistakes. Some people think that's not enough. Some people will never forgive her, and that's fair. She doesn't deserve forgiveness. He turned to his wife, saw tears streaming down her face. But she deserves recognition for choosing to change, for refusing to hide behind lawyers and corporate structures, for spending 10 years building something that saved thousands of lives. Redemption isn't about erasing the past. It's about creating a future so much better that the scales begin to balance. Sophia has done that. We've done that together, and we'll keep doing it for as long as we're alive. Later that evening, after the crowds dispersed and the building grew quiet, Ethan and Sophia stood alone before the memorial wall. 10 years. It felt like a lifetime and an instant simultaneously. "Do you think we've done enough?" Sophia asked quietly. "To balance what I caused?" "No. And we never will. You can't balance 14 deaths, or 216, or thousands. You can only work every day to prevent more." Ethan took her hand. "But I think you've transformed what could have been just tragedy into something meaningful. That's more than most people manage. I couldn't have done it without you. We did it together. That's the point." He pulled her close. "Partners. In crime fighting, in love, in building impossible things. Always." They kissed, surrounded by the faces of those they'd failed to save but had spent a decade honoring. The memorial hall was quiet, sacred, heavy with purpose. This was their church, their confessional, their sanctuary, where they came to remember why the work mattered when it felt overwhelming. Outside the Phoenix Response Center, Seattle continued its endless rhythm. Workers heading home to families, buildings rising from the ground, life persisting in all its messy, complicated glory. Somewhere in the city, a construction worker checked structural integrity before starting a shift, using training the center had provided. Somewhere, a family grieving a workplace death found their way to a support group Vanessa led. Somewhere, a whistleblower made the terrifying choice to speak up, knowing organizations like the Phoenix Center would protect them. The ripples continued expanding, touching lives Ethan and Sophia would never meet, preventing tragedies that would never make headlines precisely because they were prevented. That was the real victory, not the awards or legislation or media coverage, but the quiet accumulation of lives saved, families kept intact, workers returning home safe. In the center's garden, added during the 5th expansion, a bronze plaque caught the last rays of evening sun. "In memory of those who died because we failed, in honor of those who lived because we learned, may their sacrifice transform how we value human life. People before profits, always." 14 names were listed first. Then 202 more. Space remained for others, because despite all their work, people still died in preventable accidents. But fewer each year. Fewer because of training programs and whistleblower protections and cultural shifts and federal legislation, and a center built from grief that refused to let that grief be meaningless. Ethan and Sophia walked through the garden as darkness fell, hands clasped, comfortable in the silence that came from knowing each other completely. They'd survived the parking garage attack, the kidnapping, Morrison's sabotage, public scrutiny, their own demons. They'd transformed from enemies to allies to partners to lovers to spouses. They'd built something that mattered from the ruins of their worst moments. "Happy anniversary," Sophia said suddenly. "Our anniversary isn't for 3 more months. Not that anniversary. 10 years ago tonight, you tried to get me to shut down Plant 7. I fired you instead. So technically, this is the anniversary of when our story really started. That's a depressing anniversary to celebrate. Or it's a reminder of how far we've come, how much we've transformed, how we took the worst moment and built a lifetime of better moments from it." She stopped walking, turned to face him. "I'd do it all again, even the painful parts, because they led here." "Me too," Ethan said, and meant it. Not because the journey had been easy or the pain worthwhile or any of the trauma justified, but because fighting through darkness together had taught them what really mattered. And what mattered was choosing right over easy, every day, no matter the cost. They walked back inside, turning off lights, locking doors, leaving the center ready for tomorrow's battles. Their car waited in the parking lot, not far from where Ethan had been working as night security when he'd saved Sophia's life a decade ago. Full circle, in the way life often came around to its beginnings. At home, their daughters were already there, Emma visiting from law school, Leah back from an engineering conference. The 4 of them ate dinner together, talking about cases and designs and plans for expanding the center's reach. A family built from tragedy, sustained by love, united by mission. Later, when Emma and Leah had gone to bed, Ethan and Sophia sat on their balcony overlooking the city. The same city where 14 men had died, where 2 little girls had been kidnapped, where corruption had thrived unchecked, where impossible things had happened because people had refused to accept impossibility. "What do you think happens next?" Sophia asked. "We've accomplished so much. Built the center, passed legislation, changed culture. What's left to fight for?" "Everything," Ethan said simply. "Because the work is never done. There will always be corporations cutting corners, executives prioritizing profit, workers endangered by negligence. We've made progress, incredible progress, but we haven't won. We've just established the battlefield." "That's exhausting." "It is. But it's also purposeful. We get to wake up every morning knowing our work matters." "How many people can say that?" He pulled her close. "Besides, I'm not fighting alone anymore. I have you, our daughters, our team, an entire movement of people who believe what we believe. That's more than I ever dreamed possible when I was drowning in grief and anger." "We're lucky," Sophia said quietly. "We're blessed. There's a difference." Ethan kissed her forehead. "Lucky is random chance. Blessed is earning grace through how we respond to trials. We've been through hell, but we chose to build heaven from the ashes. That's not luck. That's choice." They sat in comfortable silence as the city lights flickered below, each light representing a life, a family, a person whose safety depended on people like them refusing to accept preventable deaths. The weight was enormous, but shared between 2 people who'd learned to carry impossible things together, it became bearable. The phoenix had risen from the ashes, not once, but repeatedly, every time corruption tried to burn it down. And it would keep rising long after Ethan and Sophia were gone, because they'd built something bigger than themselves. A movement, a mission, a promise that every worker deserved to come home safe. That parking garage attack seemed like a lifetime ago. The terrified CEO and the grease-stained mechanic who'd saved her, now married and running a national movement, from enemies to partners, from tragedy to triumph, from death to life. It was the kind of story nobody would believe if it were fiction. But it was real. As real as the 37 photographs on the memorial wall. As real as the 15,000 workers trained this year alone. As real as love growing in the ruins of everything that should have destroyed it. Sophia leaned against Ethan's shoulder, feeling his heartbeat steady and strong. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For saving my life. For giving me a second chance. For building this with me. For loving me despite everything. For making impossible things possible. Thank you for the same. All of it." He held her closer. "We saved each other, Sophia. That's what partners do. Inside the house, their daughters slept safe and secure, dreaming of futures where workplace tragedies were historical anomalies rather than accepted risks, where speaking truth protected you instead of destroying you, where corporations valued people over profits, not because regulations forced them to, but because it was the right thing to do. That future wasn't here yet, might never be fully realized, but it was closer than it had been 10 years ago. Closer because people had refused to stay silent. Closer because one CEO chose accountability over denial. Closer because a Navy SEAL mechanic turned tragedy into purpose. The only easy day was yesterday. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new fights, new opportunities to choose right over easy. But Ethan and Sophia would face them together, building on the foundation they'd laid, protecting the movement they'd created, honoring the lives lost by saving lives yet to come. The phoenix rose, and rose, and rose again, always.